Up and running.
All set.
Okay, at this point, I would like to call the March 17th, 2025 meeting of the Charter Township Board to order as of 6:30. Please stand and join me for the invocation, please. Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us together today that we may exemplify your will in the execution of proper governance. Please bless us all with your wisdom and a clear understanding of the issues before us, and grant us the clarity of mind to do what is best for everyone who has entrusted us to act on their behalf. Given this day in which we honor St. Patrick for his dedication to the faith, may the luck of the Irish be with us all today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, could I get a roll call, please?
Walker.
Here.
River.
Here.
Hunt.
Here.
Spire.
Here.
Deaton here. Susie.
Here.
Hovarder. Here.
Okay.
Should we mention, also representing, we have the township manager and our attorney, Joe.
Thank you. So with that, I would like to open the call to the public as of 6:32 p.m.
Cindy Coucher.
I have, my greatest concern is our water. What is it going to do to our water? Also, they've been up surveying by me on the sidewalk. I'd like to know just where the sidewalk's going, if it's going to go and continue where it is now and then meet. And I was wondering if they're going to leave some trees in front of my house on the other side of the road and not take them right down to where it's barren. The county told me they were only going to have one entrance, that there would not be an entrance up where I live. And my last one is, I was told at one time the fire trucks was going to go between my house and the neighbor's house. They were going to do it right across the street. And I would like to propose that the old road where the new road comes and then you make your left-hand turn to come up by the cul-de-sac, there used to be a driveway right straight through there. And I was wondering, instead of coming between the two houses on the opposite side of the street where we live, if they just couldn't come right up that way and use that where it used to be a driveway. Those are some of my concerns, and I know there's a lot of other people that will address the concerns that I haven't written down.
Can you give us your address, please?
Yes, 6960 Chalice Road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Renee and Michael Green.
Good evening. For the record, the address is 6545 Catalpa Drive. As far as it goes for the subdivision that's going in next to ours, we were told at the planning meeting that it was going to be 55 single-family homes. Now it says 55 single-family site condominiums. That's a little different than what they had planned, and we need an explanation as to what these are going to be, how they're going to look, because we were under the impression it was going to be similar to our neighborhood. So, if we can get that addressed and find out what's going on, that would be great. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hello everyone, I represent my family that has lived off of Chalice Road for the last 30 years. I ask the board to deny the proposed change from agriculture to low-density residential for the following reasons. The Genoa Township area continues to be built up, which degrades the values that this area once had. We used to be a small, peaceful, safe community, but with more developments, this only hurts those values. Talking about the safety value, this proposed 55-unit condo would, let's say, add 2 cars per household. There's over 100 more vehicles on Chalice and Door Road. These roads have become racetracks, and due to Genoa Township not having its own police force, overall safety of these roads would decrease due to the higher volumes of vehicles and no police force to monitor this area. To talk about environmental destruction, destroying the few remaining natural areas of Genoa Township will increase air pollution, kill animal populations, introduce invasive plant species. As a lady just asked, where will the water come from for the drinking water? Is it going to come from the wells that are being depleted? My parents are going to have to drill a couple hundred more feet to get reliable water. And with this continued mindset to rezone the very few agricultural untouched lands we have left, we will cease to have any untouched land in the near future, and I hope we don't want to turn into a Novi, the Farmington Hills, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jeannie, I'm sorry, I can't remember your last name, from Osceola Township.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak. I thought we were just signing this.
Oh,
In
okay.
person.
Thank you. Dan Cashian,
6385 Grand Circle. Just to reiterate, I'm kind of here to represent some of the residents in Mountain View subdivision, and basically their concerns, the ones that have talked to me, have already been spoken about. One, wells, folks are worried about their wells drying up. There has been some discussion at some of the planning commission meetings that some of the people were saying they saw differences when they stopped watering the golf course at Mount Brighton right away. And so, makes a lot of sense that folks are worried about their wells drying up, needing to dig them deeper. That would especially be true for those higher on the hill, like on Catalpa. Second concern is the traffic, which has also just been spoken about. Since Crooked Lake Road was paved, Chalice Road is has a far heavier load of traffic. There's no denying that. Even independent of a new development going in, there is a lot of concern about safety along Chalice Road now. I'm not here to offer suggestions for that. I don't profess to know enough to do that, but I'm hoping that at some point somebody is going to do something to slow down the cars on that road, because it's getting to the point where it's not safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jerry, I'm sorry, Jerry, I can't remember your last name, Summit Hill? That's you.
She just signed this in. I didn't have
You go up and speak. And then I have to have Heath.
Good evening again. If you guys go ahead with this, they have talked, they have a decent plan, I think, and they have tweaked it some that has made it better, even though I wish that land would stay the way it is. And I think a lot of the people around there, as they are concerned about their aquifer, all the houses in that area are going to be on the same aquifer. And they have a legitimate concern stating that. But if it does go ahead, I think there should be some assurances from Pulte that the 100-foot setback, natural growth around the perimeter, there should be something that holds them to that, for one thing. And then as to the water issue, the aquifer issue, there should be something that holds them accountable if there is problems with wells in that area. And also, the big issue for me, and I don't live there, but I'm always concerned about wetland preservation. As you all know, you got my email today if you looked at that. And we do have a wetland there, a very large one, that they are setting aside and not going to do anything with that, which is great. But I think there should still be some oversight on that wetland and make sure that this subdivision doesn't cause any problems for that wetland, whether it's fertilizer, pesticides, water coming out of that hill, as we've covered it with concrete, and flowing into that wetland. And then one other thing. At the Planning Commission, there was a couple neighbors that spoke about their land. They are in that sub that's west of the subject property, and they spoke about already having flooding issues in their yards. So I think that's something that needs to be addressed for sure, because I would expect there's probably going to be more of that when we change that hill to concrete. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, does anyone else wish to address the board? Sir.
My name is Zenon Chorney. I live on Grand Circle, and I'm one of the homes that butts up to the wetland pond. So we want to echo a lot of the concerns regarding the water. First of all, the wells, because many of the homes do not have very deep wells, and we're going to have many more straws in the aquifer, if you will, and we are very concerned about that. A lot of the other meetings that I attended showed the map of the proposed build as a two-dimensional map. And we live in the low point of the existing subdivision, and we're very concerned that sometimes you can miss the effect of a three-dimensional map and what would happen with the detention pond and the runoff from that. We have a lot of concerns for our property, for what that would do. If the new homes all start to fertilize, what that would do for the water quality and what that would do for the wetland and also for the beautification of the area. We're also concerned about construction vehicles. We noticed that when they were building the traffic circle on Chalice and Bauer, that many of the construction vehicles actually went through on Grand Circle. It's a semicircle that has access to Chalice Road in two parts, and it was a very convenient turnaround for the heavier trucks, and that's going to damage our roads. And the last time we had the roads redone, the residents were responsible for part of that. So we're really concerned about the same thing happening. And lastly, I want to address the issue of the light pollution in the area. It's been steadily increasing in the 30 years that my wife and I have lived here. We absolutely loved it when we first came in, and we're concerned that if we don't have proper rules for lighting, the lighting can go into the sky and then further increase the light pollution. And again, I want to echo the last point, was also the increased traffic in the area. Chalice Road is getting increasingly dangerous, and we're very concerned that we now have an access road for the construction site that's very close to Grand Circle East entrance, and it's going to make it much more unsafe, we feel, with the increased traffic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else?
My name is Elaine Sampson, 6280 Sundance Trail, and I really wasn't planning on speaking, but I did want to really just ditto everything that the people have said. I originally read where it was homes, 55 homes, and now they're saying condos, and so now you're kind of looking at a little bit more people and traffic and what's going to happen with down the road. And it's like they said, I don't want, we've lived out here 50 years, and so I've seen a very drastic change in Brighton. When we moved out here, the only place to eat was the Canopy. So it's quite a difference now. But we love it out here, and I'd like to see it stay just a nice rural area and not become another Novi. We don't need all of that. Keep the beauty of this area. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to say anything here at the call to the public? Sir?
Hubert Winklebauer, 3844 Bauer Road. I've lived here for 55 years, and everybody's talking about water. I've had the same well since 1970, and it finally died this November. So I had to have a new well dug, and I feel duped because it's the same depth. It was 1,300 feet. The first time it was 1,300 feet, this time 20 feet removed. I had so much rust and hardness in the water that I had to buy a new water softening system for $1,300. So I agree with the people that they may anticipate that. And I know in the mid-'80s, when the city of Brighton put in a 24-inch well on Brighton Road and Chalice, our water quality went from very good to bad. People from Ann Arbor used to come up to drink the water. Then I had to have a water softener installed. So there have been 2 steps now that the water quality has deteriorated. So if we have 55 wells in there, it's the obvious result is going to be poorer water quality. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we will close the call to the public as of 6:48 p.m. And with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion? With that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Now we will move on. I would entertain a motion to approve the regular agenda.
Make a motion to approve the regular agenda.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Moving on to action item number 3. This is a public hearing and consideration of recommendations for approval of the rezoning ordinance number Z2504, Environmental Impact Assessment, Planned Unit Development Agreement, and Conceptual PUD Plan to rezone 127.57 acres from Agriculture, AG, to Low-Density Residential, LDR, with Residential Planned Unit Development Overlay, or PUD, to allow for a proposed 55-unit, single-family site condominium development located at the northwest corner of Chalice Road and Bauer Road. The proposed rezoning is for the following parcels: 471123, 400, 008, 471123, 400, 007, 471123, 471100001 and 4711-23-300-003. And the request is submitted by Pulte Homes of Michigan. Before I open a call to the public, just wanted to mention, the question regarding site condos versus homes, it's actually, it's a way that developers are able to develop the property. It makes it go a little bit quicker. There's a few less hurdles. These will be, they won't all look the same. In your mind, you're probably thinking a condominium complex like many that you see. That's not what's being proposed. If you're familiar with the Oak Point subdivision, those homes are technically considered site condos. But they are single-family homes to look at them. So I just wanted to answer that question to alleviate some concerns. With that, I will go ahead and open the call to the public specific to this. Actually, would you like to do the hearing first, or the presentation?
Yeah, I think so, and I
Okay.
get a sense that many of the people that spoke here this evening spoke for this item, so
They
we'll
did.
have another call to the public for this item, but they don't have to get up and say it again if
Yeah.
they've already commented.
Yeah, we've recorded that, but after the presentation, if you have any questions or concerns after hearing it, please come forward. So, yeah, with that, I would like to welcome the proposed developers.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Testing, testing.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. Good evening. My name is Mike Knowles. I'm with the Umlor Group. Umlor Group is a civil engineering and surveying company out of Wixom, 49287 West Road in Wixom. With me here tonight is one of my associates, Brian Biskner, and also several with Pulte Homes of Michigan. We have Joe Score, the Vice President of Land Acquisitions. We have Brooks Cowan. We have Paul Schick, and that's it from Pulte Homes tonight.
Okay.
So I have a short presentation to go through with you this evening. We're pleased to have received a unanimous recommendation for approval from the Genoa Township Planning Commission. We visited them 3 times, and they were well-attended meetings. We also are pleased that both your staff and your outside consultants have also recommended approval of this job, as well as Livingston County Planning Department and Livingston County Health Department. We held a public informational meeting for our neighbors over at Mountain View. The HOA was kind enough to invite us over to walk through the plan and our development concept here. Over the course of the last year, the plan before you tonight has changed to respond to expressed concerns that we received. We listened and we made adjustments to the plan as a result of some of the concerns that were expressed. So we're very proud of the resulting plan that you have in front of you tonight. We hope we can count on your continued support for this wonderful master plan compliant development plan. We have reviewed several of the draft conditions that are in tonight's agenda packet, and we wanted to clarify several items with respect to tree preservation and clearing. Some of the conditions in the draft resolution are not problematic. We can handle those, no problem. But some of the conditions that are focused on tree clearing are problematic, and I'd like to point those out over the course of the presentation so that we can come to resolution on those items or you to support this project to move it forward. So tonight I'll focus a portion of the presentation on tree issues to demonstrate the fact that the plan before you tonight will be a significant improvement over the by right parallel plan in many ways, which is the primary goal of a residential planned unit development. Number 2, that it provides environmental and other public benefits that would not be achieved under the by right plan, and that it has been carefully and thoughtfully designed to minimize the impact to the natural environment with significant input from the township and the public. and it results in more significant presentation and sustainability of the property. Slide 2 is the parallel plan. So several folks have approached me over the course of the meetings and even again tonight asking, how many units is it? I've seen a 58, I've seen 55, how many is it? So the proposed development is for 55 units, and the parallel plan shows 58 units. So what we're required to do is to put together a plan that would be compliant with your zoning before we go to consider the RPUD, so that we could see what could be built there. For example, everything to the left, let's see if my pointer will work on the screen. No, it doesn't really. Everything to the left of the red line is in the RA acreage, which requires a minimum of 2-acre lot sizes, and we've drawn on there 2-acre lot sizes. Everything to the right would be in the low density residential, LDR, and that requires 1-acre minimum before you go to a PUD. And so what we do is we do the proposed development to calculate how many lots would be allowed in here under just straight zoning. And that comes out to 58. We spent quite a bit of time with the Planning Commission to verify that all of the lots that we have depicted here are buildable lots. We did blow-ups on selected lots that were selected by the Planning Commission to demonstrate where the building envelope would be, where the septic field would be, where the reserve septic field would be, and to show that you could build every one of these lots. So these lots are consistent with Genoa Township's future land use plan. So the fact that we're here to do a rezoning is we're rezoning it from the underlying rural agricultural to what is mandated or prescribed by the Genoa Township master plan. So that's the whole point of the parallel plan. So this would require a rezoning whether we do an RPUD or not. And that's why it's a rezoning. So moving on to what we are proposing. So the parallel plan is what we are not proposing. It's put out there to be as a comparison basis to say, is their proposal better than what we could get under the normal straight zoning? So what we are proposing here is a cluster development under the RPUD, Residential Plan Unit Development. Your ordinance permits us to reduce the lot size from 1 acre minimum to 3/4 acre minimum, so long as certain conditions are met. Those conditions have been more than met and exceeded, and I'll walk you through those momentarily. But what we're proposing here is 55 estate homes on the total property of 127 acres. So we're a little under 2 to the acre, basically, in this proposed development. The concept of a PUD is to have less of an impact on the natural features by clustering the homes in a more concentrated development area. The development area that you see here is right around 50 acres. And so by doing that, you're able to preserve more significant natural feature areas in their pristine condition, rather than the alternative plan, which you just saw, which would be to preserve some natural features. One of the things that you may want to note is on this parallel plan, everything to the left of the line is showing as developed. It's about half of the area over there. So it would constitute approximately another 2,000 trees of cutting. Well, the whole entire clearing area is only 2,159 trees. So it would double the amount of clearing to go with the parallel plan. So this is one of the reasons why we say this is more environmentally friendly, is because you can save an additional 2,000 trees by going this route. Okay. So preservation of the natural features, number one. Number two, as I mentioned, it's master plan compliant. And also, it brings other public benefits, not just the preservation of the natural features, but also the off-site path. So we're proposing to do an off-site path from the entrance. We're going to extend it to the west, should we be approved, to the Mountain View entrance so that they can also enjoy the path. And it'll go down to the roundabout at Bower and Chalice Road, where there's an existing path that goes south to Hornung Elementary School there. We've also submitted to the Livingston County Road Commission a concept plan for their consideration of this proposed path. And they think it looks good. So the path that we have, there's another slide that shows kind of where it would go, and they had no objections. Obviously, it's a long process. We're still in the early steps. We're still in the rezoning and site plan, concept site plan step. And we have to go through final engineering and outside agency permits before we get to the end, if we're so fortunate enough to pass this evening. So the off-site path is part of the benefits. I also have noted here in the lower left-hand corner the deviations. So on a PUD, typically it requires some deviations from the strict conditions of the dimensional requirements in the ordinance in exchange for the public benefits. That's the gist of it in layman's terms. You'll notice on our 7 deviations there that 5 out of 7 are simply to go to the smaller lots. So they're deviations on the lot width, the minimum lot width, deviation on the side yard setback, deviation on the overall square footage from being an acre down to 3/4 of an acre, and that one's repeated again because of the septic requirement to be an acre to go down to 3/4 of an acre. So that's 5 out of 7. The other 2, one of them is, were we to get our Eagle wetland permit, state of Michigan is the jurisdictional authority over jurisdictional wetlands, and this is a jurisdictional wetland. So were we to get our impact approved on the small piece that is right underneath the road that goes to that very far northern section, thank you. There's a small impact there.
Which lot number is that?
It is between lots.
13 and 17.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you push that center button and hold it down, I think that becomes kind of a focus pointer. You try that. Maybe not.
Or it makes the screen go away.
It could make the screen go away, yeah. Okay.
Anyway, it's right in this area.
Thank you. So yeah, so that would also require the buffer, because the state regulates the wetlands themselves, and the local jurisdiction regulates the buffers around that. So that would be one of the waivers that we're asking for, and the other is the distance on that cul-de-sac is 1,055 feet, and in your ordinance, 1,000 feet is the maximum length of the cul-de-sac. So those are the deviations. They're not extremely significant when you compare them to the benefits of saving 2,000 trees and having a permanent conservation easement and an extraordinary amount of open space. So let's continue. So the benefits. So first of all, the first benefit is that there are fewer units, 55 versus 58. The second is a permanent preservation of the open space. And you see I have labeled in green on the slide here the preservation area. So everything from the purple line to the red line where it says preservation area will be put in a permanent conservation easement that precludes anybody from ever building there in eternity. As a condition, a standard condition of our Eagle wetland permit, the MDEQ will require us to put a preservation area, a conservation easement over the remaining wetlands on the site, which is the majority of them, but not over the uplands, and there's a significant upland piece there as well. The Planning Commission asked us to put a permanent conservation easement over the upland woodlands in that area as well, which the applicant, Pulte Homes, agreed to do. So, nice preservation area. You can see in red I have reduced impact. So one of the things we worked with your planning commission on was to reduce the footprint of the development in that particular area. And we reduced that was the reason why the home count went from 58 to 55. 3 homes were removed from that area, which shrunk the footprint of the development over there, which reduced the impact both on trees and, well, there was no wetland impact there, but on the overall tree impact of the area. One of the other things the Planning Commission asked us to do was, in blue, you see it says 2 times basin landscape. That's the location where the stormwater management basin is going to be located. And because that basin obviously requires significant excavation in that area will be cleared. And the Planning Commission wanted to look out for the folks in Mountain View that are going to be directly adjacent to that, because of course you could look across a basin and see homes across the other side of the basin. And so they asked us to double the landscape plantings, whatever the required landscape plantings are there, to do double that. And we did that, and that's reflected on your landscape plan, and I have some of those numbers, I think, on a subsequent slide as well. So the next one down was the landscape buffer. You'll see also on another slide, and this is one of the issues where the proposed language is a bit problematic, is so we do have a 100-foot landscape easement set back from the property line to create a buffer between the existing residents and the new residents. Some of that buffer will be with existing vegetation, and some of that buffer will be with new vegetation. And you'll see that in a subsequent slide. The reason I say it's a bit problematic is just the specifics of the language that was proposed indicates that every tree within 100 feet of that line would be saved, and that's not the case on our current plan, so that's a bit problematic. I also wanted to point out in green at the very bottom the perimeter screening. So there were some questions that came up, and you'll see on another slide why it created some confusion. But we're preserving a significant number of trees in the buffer. It's around 425 trees that are just in that buffer area. And you'll see that on another slide as well. So increased landscape requirements, reduced footprint, the off-site path. By unanimous consent of both the public and of the Planning Commission, we had proposed 2 different alternatives. One was to do a natural walking path in the preservation area, and the alternative was to continue a full-service public path down to the roundabout to hook up with the path to the schools. And there was overwhelming support for that path. As mentioned a couple times here in the public hearing thus far, Chalice Road can be dangerous, certainly not something that you would want to walk or bike on. And so this path would make a wonderful public benefit, and Pulte Homes has agreed to embark upon that. And so we're grateful for the kind words in our last meeting from members of the Planning Commission and from the public, because this developer listened to what was being said at the 3 public meetings and responded to it for the concerns that were expressed. So we were able to set ourselves apart from average developers that are trying to get more density, trying to, utilize this zoning mechanism for their benefit. It does benefit us because the preservation is a benefit, the path is a benefit, and the reduced development area is certainly a benefit to development costs. But it also provides public benefits, and we aren't seeking to get more units out of that. We're seeking to have a win-win for everybody. This plan is not overreaching, it's modest, it's master plan compliant, it's thoughtful, and it's responsive to the comments that we've received thus far. It promotes sustainability and preservation goals that this township has explicitly stated. Okay, what are the preservation areas? So the upland areas are highlighted in kind of a light green. There's 26.46 acres of woodlands. That 26 acres is heavily wooded, and we estimate 2,600 trees, about 100 to the acre in that particular area, for the trees that are going to be preserved in the green area. The wooded wetlands is 32.35 acres, and we presume a slightly smaller unit, about 2,400 trees there, about 75 to the acre, because in a lot of the wetland areas you don't have as thick tree growth. And so, overall, we have, 58 acres within this preservation area out of the whole 127 acres. We're preserving more area than we're developing. The development acreage is about 50 acres. And also the buffer zone that we talked about, here's what I was talking about, was slightly confusing previously. And there were some folks that commented in the public where they thought that the whole yellow area was going to be cleared. And I have changed the slide to show where the limits of disturbance, or the grading, where we need to grade for the lots and the rear yards and the roads, where that would fall in that preservation area. And you can see a big chunk of that, particularly in the bottom right-hand corner. That would be the southeast corner of the site. Big chunk of woods over there from Chalice Court and Bauer Road that are being preserved. So let's talk trees and tree numbers. So, as you know, woodland preservation is beneficial to everybody, and it's encouraged in many ways through tree regulations like the one that you have, market forces, because customer preferences are to have a wooded backdrop at their homes, and these command lot premiums. Through financial incentives, because it's not free to clear trees. It costs money to develop those things, so clearing costs and lot premiums. Trees provide a healthy environment and clean air, which everybody has a common desire to have. They add beauty and value to a community, sustainability, and provide shade. Their root system provides stormwater uptake, and they provide important screening between adjacent properties. This Legacy Hills plan before you tonight achieves all of those goals. As you can see here, I've noted that in the preservation, the 58-acre area, there's approximately 5,000 trees that are going to be saved in a permanent preservation conservation. In the buffer area in green that you see along between Mountain View, along Chalice Court, along Bauer, and along the railroad tracks, that area we have completed a tree survey. Your ordinance requires a tree survey of all trees that are 8 inches and up, caliper size, and there are 423 trees that are being preserved in the green area. They include a wide range. I've listed some of them out there. The biggest one in there is a 34-inch red oak, but there's a grove of oaks and white oaks, red oaks, walnuts, maples. There's some great trees in there, and you'll see why on one of the subsequent slides. So the area that is outlined in orange is the development area. So that's a 50-acre development area, and that is also the clearing area. That area constitutes 40% of the site. If you divide 50 acres divided by 127 total acres, that's 40% of the site is proposed to be developed. However, there's only 30% of the trees in that area. How do we know that? Because we did a full tree survey of the entire area, number one. And number two, you look at historical aerials. So let me show you. So this is the site back in 1998, and I preserved that same orange line, which is the proposed development area. What you can see back in 1998 is this was primarily an open field with some hedgerows between the fields, And in the bottom right corner is an area of older growth woods, and in the upper left corner is an area of older growth woods. But you can see in the preserved areas that we have a thicker woods. So keep in mind, this is 25 years ago. How do we know where the largest and most mature trees are on this site? We can see it by looking at this 25 years ago. The trees that grew up on the development area side are all 25 years old, but for the hedgerows and these small pieces. But the trees that are up in the green conservation area are the older specimens. And so we know that we are not only preserving a huge number, we're preserving 70% of the trees on the site, but we are also preserving the best specimens by taking a look at historically what has happened on this property. So these are significant tree preservation efforts, and we hope you agree that it is a public benefit to do that. I also want to point out with regard to the proposed motion tonight, this is a great time for a sidebar with this slide, is that the way Pulte Homes of Michigan proposes to develop this site is, we've got rolling hills in there, and we've already poked 150 test hole minimums to determine where the septic fields perk, where the reserve fields perk. In some of those cases, we have a preliminary approval from the Livingston County Health Department. In some of those areas, it requires that we cut down the existing grade by 5 or 7 feet to get to the sand seam. So there's going to be significant grading, not just because of the septic fields, but also because of the roads. We're required to have certain slopes on the roads, certain slopes on the driveways. For the home construction itself, having both the septic and reserve, you need the water to run away from the homes. You've got side yard swales and you've got rear yard swales. So this area will all be mass graded if this project is approved within the orange perimeter, 50 acres of the site. That can't be done. We can't save trees on the interior of the site making those kind of earthwork changes. So we hope that preserving 70% of the trees on the site is something that will please you. To try to preserve individual specimen trees on the interior is extremely problematic. So I've been doing this for about 30 years, and before I became an arborist about 5 years ago, I used to try to save trees on the interior of developments, and ultimately they all met the same fate. Sometimes they took a year, sometimes it took 5 years, sometimes it took more. But whenever we tried to save trees on the side yards and the rear yards and the front yards of the development sites, they all ended the same. When you take a tree that grew up in woods and you take away all of the friends that are around it and identify, we're going to try to save this 20-inch red oak here in the middle. Take away all of the protections that he's grown up with. Change the hydrology, change the grading around him. That tree ultimately will die. And I've tried it a lot of times. We used to call them the birthday cake when the tree was up with retaining walls all around it to retain the grade up there. Or the tree well, where we'd have to put drainage in to try to maintain the same type of drainage. When you look at a tree in, say, Washington, D.C., or in a big city, and you see a big tree in a small tree grade along a busy urban area, those trees started there, and their root structure has grown underneath the pavement and underneath the sidewalks over the course of time. If you were to try to do it the other way around, where you take a large 20-inch tree and add sidewalks and roads over the top of it, that tree's a goner. And that's the problem with trying to clear on an individual basis within the interior of a mass-graded development of this sort. And that's one of the clarifications that I wanted to make, because some of the conditions kind of were under the impression that it would be a two-phase program, that there would be clearing with the development separate from clearing with the homes. That's not the case. The clearing will be all done at one time. The mass grading will be all done at one time. The underground utilities, including the stormwater management, the curbs and pavement, all at one time. The house pads will be prepared, and yes, there will be plot plans for each of the individual house pads that will show the locations of the septic, the reserve, the well, the driveway, the slopes, the side yard swales, the rear yard swales, all of the requirements of all of the plot plans, but there won't be any trees on the lots themselves that will be cleared other than the ones that you see now in the buffer areas, the 423 trees that I've identified in the buffer areas that are outside of that line. Those trees will be preserved on the lots. And so one of the pertinent comments in those conditions were to have tree protection fencing along the preserved areas. That's an absolute must, and we will absolutely do that. So like I say, there are some things that do work, some things that don't work, and I just wanted to clarify exactly what our vision for the development process for the site is going to take. So now here we are in 2024, and you can see what I've overlaid is the actual tree surveys. So now there's a list with thousands of trees listed on this tree survey, and you can see just by the density of where the spots are, because your ordinance requires 8-inch DBH and up, the spots are all kind of showing roughly in the same areas that we saw already, the upper left, lower right, and in the windrows, and some of the bigger invasive species, because once the field goes fallow, the first trees to take over are the invasive species, so the fast-growing catalpa trees and those types of trees, box elders, those are the ones that kind of take over a fallow field, and you can see some of that in the tree survey here. So this is, the tree survey was done last year, 2024, and again, there's approximately 5,500 total trees preserved on the site, in the buffers and in the preserved areas, which is about 72% of the trees, the total trees on the site. We do know that we are clearing 2,159 trees within that white area that you see on the screen over there. And we do know that there's 104 landmark trees by the definition proposed in the draft language. And so while we find it completely acceptable to have to come back to the zoning administrator for approval if that line were to change, we wanted to be clear tonight on what we're asking for, because we already know where those trees are and where the development area is. So if you approve the same plan, this plan before you tonight, that the Planning Commission approved, there already is 104 landmark trees and 2,159 regular trees, ranging anywhere from 8-inch up, that will be cleared as a result of this proposal. It sounds like a lot of trees, but when you consider that there's 7,600 trees on the site, it still works out to 28%. And so, in your ordinance, it requires that we bring to the zoning administrator's attention anytime that we're over 25% of the trees, so that you can have due consideration of the approval. There's no tree replacements or no alternatives or no remedies or penalties spelled out in your ordinance for cutting the trees or exceeding that, but I am required to bring it to your attention, and I did want to clarify exactly what we're proposing to do here tonight so that you would understand it and can make an informed decision with your vote this evening. Now I'm almost wrapped up here because I know you'll have a lot of questions. So what I wanted to show you on this particular slide is that the landscape buffer is a combination of tree saves and of new planting. So you can see here kind of the olive pinstriped shaded areas are existing trees that are proposed to be saved, to stay on site. And what you see I've highlighted in yellow and green are the proposed trees. This is on the landscape plan that's inside your package. So the landscape buffer will be a mix of saved trees and new buffer plantings, which will make a wonderful screening for both the existing residents and the future residents who are going to want the same type of privacy. I also exerted the detention pond areas that you could see the double row of landscaping that we added, and you'll see in the landscape table that we've doubled the amount of required landscape along that line so that those Mountain View folks will have a nice buffer between them and the new residents in that area. Pulte does a fantastic job with their landscaping. You can just go right down the road to the Del Webb development over at Milford Road and 96 to see the kind of landscaping that they do. They do a fantastic job. I also wanted to point out here that there's the entry feature and then there's the emergency entrance. A young lady spoke, the first speaker, about the entrance location. So I wanted to show that even though the emergency entrance, it'll be emergency use only, it'll be gated off, nobody will ever be permitted to use that as the primary entrance. It's only there for cases of emergency, but that when we cut through that area, then there's landscaping that goes back in there so that it'll still be a nice look, and that some of the best tree saves are right along that Chalice Court area. And then, of course, at the entry feature itself, you know, this is the bells and whistles of the community, right? So this is the marketing entrance feature where there'll be beautiful walls, beautiful landscaping around that Chalice Road entrance. Okay, so this is an interesting perspective. You can't see the entire property, so you see Mountain View in the upper left, and the property, the preserved area, isn't pictured, so it keeps on going. But I wanted to give you a better perspective of what we're proposing to do with the off-site path. So yellow is the proposed path that Pulte Homes would install. You can see in the upper left, below the words Mountain View, where there's a temporary construction entrance that is there, where our folks had to access to do our test wells and our test pits and our hydrology studies and our tree surveys and all of the things that we do, that they went into the site there. So the yellow line will extend to Mountain View so that Mountain View will be able to use this off-site path. You can see we're hugging it along the top, not going into the tree line. Somebody was asking about the tree line there. So Chalice Road is a rural cross-section, so it's got a ditch and swale. So there's a fairly significant ditch along Chalice Road on the north side of the road. You can still see the check dams that are in the ditch to slow the water as it goes down through that swale. So we're going to aim to be at the top of the bank over there, just along the tree area. And then come along and cross Bower Road and then get to the roundabout where there'll be a second crossing, and then it'll tie into the path to Hornung and Maltby schools. And you can see that the road commission already put in a couple of crosswalks. There's one that's shown there, and I believe there's also one that's a little more difficult to see in this plan. I believe it's in the north-south from that Mount Brighton parking lot that you see there going north towards Bower Road. So that's where the off-site path is. I also have kind of done a perspective view of that in the upper right, so you can kind of see how that might look from an actual photograph of Chalice Road. And then also right at the corner of Bower and Chalice Court, you see some trees over there. That's just the start of that big section of tree save area that you can see in the lower left corner, where it's got the words tree save on top of each other by the red line there. There's a big section of trees that are going to be saved in there. They're going to provide some wonderful screening from the development at that location. Lastly, we know that projects are often controversial. We have had several folks that were initially opposed that have come and said, you know, after all, this plan's okay. You heard that from a couple folks here tonight that said, it's not that bad. Can we try to do a little bit more here or a little bit more there? Compared to the alternative, we think it's fantastic. It's got fewer units, more preservation, more public benefit. It's going to be fine development of 55 beautiful homes. This is one example. Pulte did a project over in Northville Township that they will be using some of the same home designs. It's a great looking house. It will, we have preliminary approval from the health department for both our water and for our septic. And if we want to get into the hydrology and some of those septic results, Brian Biskner, my associate, will speak to that. If you want to hear a little bit more about the product or the pricing, Joe Score will speak to that. We hope that you're as excited about this as we are. We've put a lot of work and a lot of effort into this, and we believe it'll be a great development. So we appreciate your time and your consideration in listening to us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. This time, board, I'd like to open up questions for you guys have for the developer.
Yeah, I have a question. We had a couple of residents, probably at least 3 of them, express concern about water and the availability of water, especially when the buyers of these homes are out sprinkling their lawns to keep them golf course green, run off into the wetlands. Can you speak to those concerns? Are they legitimate concerns?
Yes, I can speak to those. Thank you for the question. So we have done a hydrogeologic study of the site. So we hired a geotechnical scientist, McDowell and Associates, to do a full hydrogeo on the site. That study was submitted to Livingston County Health Department for their review. And the conclusion from that report is that this site, the aquifers that are at this site, can support the development of this size without affecting the neighboring wells.
Without affecting
the neighboring wells. And that's a result of the hydrogeologic study. And I can have Brian speak a little bit more specifically to what they do to do that, what's submitted to the health department, what they're looking at. They're looking at, flow out of it, what the volume of water in the aquifer is. I do understand, as one gentleman mentioned, wells do have a shelf life. This site hasn't been developed, and he installed his well in 1970, and it went out last year. So they do have a limited shelf life. You have to maintain and replace your well from time to time. Also, it depends on the depth of the aquifer. Sometimes in a commercial site, we're required to go to deeper aquifers than in a residential site to handle that when there's a commercial need. So 55 homes is a standard residential need in the aquifer, and we've met all the requirements of the health department for that. The second part of your question was regarding wash into the...
I'm sorry, still on part A of my question. So let me ask it this way. With these 55 homes going in, are the neighboring communities going to run out of water? Is it going to cause their wells to fail or go dry prematurely? Are they going to, 10 years from now, maybe nobody has to dig a new well, but this goes in, and 3 years from now, everybody's having to endure the expense of a new well
right.
to get deeper. Is that going to be the case here?
No. So the answer to that question is no, and that's satisfied by the hydrogeological study that the health department looks over. Will there be somebody's well fail? Yes, but it won't be the result of this development because the people's wells fail over time, as some of the testimony here tonight talked about just a standard lifespan of a well. He put it in 1970, and it's now 55 years old, and it failed last year. That happens to wells over time, right?
I mean,
But as a
I don't want to
result-
cut you off, but your answer was, because of this new development, if it gets approved, none of the neighboring communities' wells will suffer ill effects other than naturally that they would
That's
occur
correct.
over time.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's, now the second part was, somebody made a concern about runoff because we're going to have less permeable, right, surfaces here. Where does all of that oil or, spilled gasoline go?
Yeah, so one of the nice things about modern developments is that we have to meet modern stormwater requirements. So you see on the plan here that there's a detention basin and it's connected by a stormwater management system. So there'll be curb inlets. There'll be curbs in this development. It won't be ditch and swale. There'll be curbs, storm inlets. The water will be conveyed from the road to the detention pond. There will be a couple of places on the site where there'll also be infiltration to recharge the groundwater. So there'll be either an infiltration, which you can see on the proposed area, the green area where the 4 lots are on the north side, an infiltration area there. And the county may let us also do infiltration by oversizing some pipes, HDPE stormwater pipes, backfilled with stone so that we can infiltrate water from the storm system right through the pipes. The stormwater detention pond is sized to capture the 100-year storm event. So to store the water and slowly release it at a rate less than the rate that's currently being run off of the property. So right now you have 127 acres and it's all running off of the property in a rainstorm directly. And Mr. Martin sent me a video. He lives in Mountain View, and he's been corresponding with me about this project to show me where the water runs through his backyard. So here, we store the water and release it at a controlled rate. And also while the water is being stored, that's a water quality feature because any suspended solids can settle out of that. So in terms of just normal siltation coming through stormwater, we have a detention basin that is designed to modern standards, which is different than what you have in Mountain View, because not through any fault of the homeowners there, but because of when it was developed. There is no stormwater management system in a neighborhood like that. So we're going to have modern stormwater management controls that meet 2025 Livingston County's stormwater requirements in it. And that's number one for the volume and the quality of the stormwater. Number two is concerns about fertilizers. So we have somebody brought this up in the Planning Commission meeting as well. And so you can put restrictions on the types of fertilizers that are used on the lawn. I think it's non-phosphorus, or maybe it's the phosphorus. I forget which one's bad and which one is good. But there, you can write into the master deed and bylaws to restrict the types of fertilizers that are more environmentally friendly. I did that on a development that I did in Illinois. There were a lot of wetlands in this particular site, and so we restricted the type of fertilizer. It was a great development. It had a golf course on it, 592 beautiful homes, but there was restrictions that would limit the amount of fertilizers that would run off, and we could easily do that here too. Just write it into the docs to limit the type of fertilizer that you use on your lawn as well.
Which is hard to enforce, though.
It is, no question, sir. Yeah.
Next to impossible.
Which is exactly what I was just going to say. You can put it in there, but you can only hope that people abide by it.
That's correct. You're right about that. But you would certainly hope that in the common areas that the HOA would at least follow their own rules and use that fertilizer in the detention basin, which is right adjacent to the wetlands.
I have a couple quick questions.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, Ginny. I just want to get to a couple points that Trustee Reiber made before we move on.
Oh, sure.
The final PUD site plan submittal requirements I put up on the screens. You can see item B. So right now we're looking at a conceptual plan This would have to come back to the Planning Commission, the Township Board, for final site plan approval. And the second requirement for final PUD site plan is a hydraulic impact assessment that describes the existing ground and surface water resources, looks at the water table, the direction of groundwater flow, recharge and discharge, lake levels, surface drainage, floodplains, and water quality, as well as the projected impact of the development on those resources, particularly looking at water supply, wastewater disposal, and stormwater management. So as part of the final PUD site plan, you will see additional information and study associated with the hydraulic impacts of the project.
Thank you, Kelly. I mean, this seems like it's containing itself into a bottle, and my concern was for the neighboring municipalities and those neighbors. And what I asked on their behalf was, and the gentleman replied, everything that's going to happen from these 55 units will not impact their wells. No money out of their pocket, no water quality issues, right? Other than naturally they're going to fail. I get that. And everybody in the room would agree with that. That's what I wanted to have on record here.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple things that I wanted to ask you. These are all going to be on septics, and I noticed that, I mean, because there are near wetlands, are these standard septics, or are these going to be engineered septic fields?
So most of them are standard, and it looks like we may have 3 or 4 that may need to be engineered as we get further on in the process. We're still popping a couple of holes because, as I mentioned, we reconfigured a couple of things over the course of going through the Planning Commission, so we're going to have to poke a few more test pits out on the site to make sure that we're in all of the reserves and septics, reserves and primaries rather. But we had a couple that were marginal that might have to have engineered fields, but I think it was like 3. Is that correct, Brian? 3 of them? My associate Brian kind of ran that.
Just call me Vanna.
Point.
Good evening. Brian Biskiner from the Umlar Group. Like Mike said, we did about 150 holes out there. And vast majority of it was sand. And the engineering that we're going to have to do is more related to maybe the grading of a site or something like that. Almost all of the soils were suitable for septics, as far as sands or to find sands. And so you won't have like, you've heard the horror stories of a septic failing and I had to spend $30,000 on a mound system and all that. There'll be nothing like that. It was all good sand out there. Just engineering really more from a grading, make sure everything fits well.
And because I know for history, when a property is located in the vicinity of wetlands and water, there's high radon levels. Will you be testing for radon in that area as well?
That'll be an individual home choice. I don't think you're going to have radon until radon is, if it's even there, is exiting naturally. And when you put a house in, you kind of create a conduit for it. You stick a basement down into the soil 10 feet down, and that's when you really want to test for radon. I'm not aware of any radon testing that can.
Some builders do a pre-plumbing, I guess you could say,
Yes.
for the radon systems, and so because it being so close to the wetlands, I would probably recommend, maybe something like that for, the site, maybe test, I guess start with the model and see,
Yeah.
how the radon levels would be if this were to go forward. Another potential issue that I see on my end is the shared access, for ingress and egress, specifically relating to lots 13 through 16, and again on lots 30, 31, and 32 area. Those are huge concerns because there's a lot of people that I know that have lived in shared driveways, and when you have shared driveways like that, there's a lot of fighting that happens when things don't come the proper way. I get that there's rules and regulations, but not everybody follows the rules of law. But when there's like garbage cans, or if there's going to be like somebody's having a party, let's say lots 15 or 16 is going to have a party and they need to have extra parking on the road and they block somebody in, I mean, I think we're just setting ourselves up for disaster here with fighting into the neighborhood and those shared areas. So for me personally, I would like to see lots 13 through, or actually, 13 through 16 completely eliminated, as well as lots 31 and 32. 31 is completely landlocked, it looks like, and it backs up to the railroad tracks anyways. And I think that that would be a hard sell for somebody to purchase that property. But if you could eliminate those lots, I would feel more comfortable. But as of right now, I probably would not vote for this property being as is because of those shared easements.
And Mike, if I may still, 2 points with the fire department, one with the shared driveways, one with the aquifer as well. The fire marshal has reviewed those shared driveways. They do comply with the zoning ordinance, and it's going to be a 20-foot wide paved surface with a curb in some places where we want to collect drainage. So you'll be able to get 2 cars that will be able to pass each other. And there's a T turnaround that's designed on each shared driveway according to the International Fire Code, so you can turn around emergency vehicles. It's kind of shaded there on those shared driveways. So the shared driveways are significant drives, is the point, and have been reviewed by the fire marshal. Also, in the middle of each cul-de-sac, there will be a fire suppression well, and there'll be a fire hydrant on the top of it, and that was tested as part of the hydrogeological analysis. The aquifer is healthy enough, meaning if you draw it down at a high gallons per minute for an hour to 4 hours, when it rebounds, it shows a very healthy aquifer that backfills quickly, and we can put fire suppression wells in the middle of those cul-de-sacs as well. So the fire department did review those shared driveways and had their comments, and we made revisions to that due to their comments.
I understand what you're saying, and I see that, you guys have put a lot of thought into making this different and trying to make the planning and zoning accommodations for what they recommended. But I personally know when you have people sharing a driveway, there's going to be fighting. There's going to be people not following the rules. There's going to be court cases and litigation and everything that comes along with that. And I'm just trying to see what we could do to remedy that, by setting up a development that doesn't put the residents at risk for, something like that in the future.
Understood. Just to be clear, each home will have its own driveway.
I understand.
Its access drive will be a 25-foot paved surface, or 20-foot paved surface rather than 24.
I guess I'm looking at it more as a private road than a private shared
All the
drive.
roads will be private, yeah.
Right, so it's just basically a different cross-section. It's 4 feet narrower, but it's the same type of situation.
And the ordinance allows.
It's not, like, when you think of a driveway, you usually think 12 or 16 feet for a driveway. A one-way driveway is a 12-foot, 16 feet is the minimum where you can have two-way traffic or park 2 cars side by side in a driveway. This is 20 feet, so it's the same width as the emergency access drive, so you could drive a fire truck up it, no problem. It's only 4 feet narrower than the road throughout the rest of the development.
But lots 16 has to does the garbage truck go up and down that road? Or is the garbage truck going to be going into the cul-de-sac where that round area is?
The garbage truck can go up the road, that's what the T-turnarounds are there for. I don't know whether they will or not. We'll have to find out what the garbage service, if they will. But yes, Amazon can get up there, fire trucks can get up there.
And same with lots 31 and 32?
Yes, ma'am. Same cross-section on the road there.
So school buses as well, then?
Right. Well, the school buses, I would think, would just go around the cul-de-sac, and the kids would walk to the cul-de-sac. It'd just be more convenient than turning the bus around.
Mhm.
But it certainly could
Could.
turn around. That's the requirement of the International Fire Code.
Yeah, they don't like buses backing up.
No, they don't.
No.
For good reason, right?
Absolutely. So I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
Who owns this property currently?
So this property is owned by Latrec. Thank you, Joe. Latrec. So Mr. Galbraith has entered into a contract with Pulte Homes of Michigan. Latrec is a fairly well-known entity around here. They build manufactured housing. They've owned this property for some time. They, you may have heard, or if you watched some of the other planning commission minutes, there was some other plan for this property that was 128 units that the Livingston County Health Road Commission used to plan the roundabout, saying, okay, we know this property wants to do 128, let's plug 128. So I guess the point of that is that it's one owner, they're sophisticated developers, and Pulte is now in contract with them to purchase it to do this 55 estate homes.
As long as all this goes through, they'll complete the transaction. Okay, one of the things you mentioned earlier about being clear about the trees and what will have to come down,
Yes,
sounds to me it was different than what the planning commission had agreed with in terms of some clustered trees that would be buffered and so forth within the development. Is that correct? You're talking about eliminating those?
No, sir. No, sir. No. It's no change from the planning commission. In fact, the planning commission, there was one of the planning commissioner members said at least 2 of the public hearings, I want to be perfectly clear. You're going to clear every tree within the development area. And I said, yes, that's correct. And she said, I want that to be clear to everybody. And she says, I'm for that because I don't want trees competing with septic fields, and I want you to understand what is going to happen. That was at the planning commission meeting. It's on the record. It was one of the commissioners, that a young lady, and she made a point at 2 of the different meetings, just to be perfectly clear. So this hasn't changed. Why I put such an emphasis on it today was because the proposed conditions in the write-up caused me to think that that message hadn't been transmitted effectively enough, so I wanted to clarify.
But you're also saying in the buffered area, there are some trees that are going to be cleared that shouldn't be.
Trees that
are going to be cleared that shouldn't be because they're in the buffered area?
No, sir. No, sir. So the buffer area is a requirement of your ordinance. It's a landscape buffer. It's not a natural preservation buffer. So say the property didn't have any trees. We'd still have this 100-foot buffer, and we would have to landscape them. So what we're doing is we're doing a combination, because we don't have trees throughout that entire buffer. It's a combination of planting and of existing. That also hasn't changed. What did change is, if you look at this plan here, you can see the jagged line along the green preservation area. If you flip back to either one before or the one afterward, one more. There you go. So we have the 100-foot required buffer is all highlighted in yellow, and folks were under the impression that we were clearing that to plant new landscaping in there.
No.
And that was never the case. And so if you look at the next emergency entrance where you see that yellow, and then there's a green area right above it, the idea was, hey, are you folks just saving this little tiny green strip? And it was, no, we're saving the green and the yellow. That's all going to be preserved woodlands. And so I wanted to clarify exactly which portion of the yellow buffer was going to be natural and which portion of the yellow buffer was going to be landscape. And that's why you see in probably 3 slides forward, you see the combination, one more, there you go, the combination of both preserved trees and planted. But that has nothing to do with the preservation area. So the preservation is a completely separate, 50 acres where this is a combination of both preserving existing trees and supplementing those with buffer trees.
So my concern is in the area of tree preservation, that if for some wild reason some of these trees get taken down that shouldn't have been taken down,
right,
I don't want the developer to come back and say, oops, sorry, I'm going to want tree replacement language in there that says you will replace with the same size
if not larger, than what was taken out, that shouldn't have been taken out.
Yeah, I'm sure that proposes no problem for this developer, because there are many municipalities in which we work where they already have tree replacement requirements. And any time that you take down a tree that's scheduled for preservation, you have to comply with those. Now, obviously, you can't put a new 32-inch tree back in, so a lot of them are inch for inch type of requirements. If you take down a 32-inch, you have to plant, 10 4-inch trees to make up for it, that type of thing, because you can't plant another 32-inch tree.
You can, it's just to be expensive.
Well, you can't plant a 32-inch tree. The biggest spade will let you get to about 6-inch, 8 at max. You can plant up to a 18-foot conifer, but you can't plant a 32-inch diameter tree with a spade. You can't do it. It can't be done.
So there's also some concerns that I have about the wetland buffering area.
Yes, sir.
And encroachment on that with some of the earth-moving equipment going on and everything else happening, that those things might get encroached at some point, and I want to see us put significant penalties involved if the developer encroaches on the wetlands buffering area.
Yeah, so certainly, there already are. So the MD...
Not to the extent that I want.
Okay, so the current fine for a knowing violation of an NPDES permit is $37,500 a day for those violations. So Pulte Homes takes it very serious. They have inspectors out multiple times a week. They are fully compliant with those soil erosion control permits.
I hear what you're saying. However, I know how some developers operate, and they go oops, or they hope that no one catches it. We will be watching every aspect of this development.
Understood.
As will the state, which is nice, because like you said, the fines from the state are extreme.
Yeah, they're extreme.
Which is great.
It encourages us to follow the rules, which we do, which is why Pulte Homes has been in business for so long. We're not a small fly-by-night operation here. We're not a one and done. We don't want to come.
I'm very familiar with them.
We don't want to come in your community and then just leave. We want to come back and work with you again and again and again. So we want you to be proud of what we do. We want to be proud of what we do.
So has DNR chimed in on any of this yet, or have you been to them yet?
Not yet, because since we're still in the rezoning process, usually we don't get Eagle involved until the final engineering documents, because once we have the final grading plan set, that's when we propose those to Eagle. We may get them involved a little bit earlier here. We do have an impact. We do have a wetland scientists that we've engaged for this particular product with Bar Engineering, Dana Knox. She's fantastic. She works with Eagle all the time on their wetlands.
I do have another quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Because the quality of the water, everybody's saying about the rust, and there's, we can even tell here at the Township Hall, everybody's going to require a water softener.
Right.
What will you do about the discharge of the water softener being so close to the wetlands?
Well, I don't think it would be any different than the discharge that you would have now. So other than the fact that we have a stormwater basin, I'm not aware of any additional requirements for...
Even on protected wetlands, they're not going to have any type of specifications to it be routed a certain area?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Or use a potassium instead of like a salt. You don't want a salt plume going into a wetland.
Right, but there's not a direct discharge from the water softeners. Water softener discharge is just like a stormwater discharge, right? So I don't know whether it's going to the sanitary system or whether it's going to the storm system. In this case, I don't know the answer to that question. Can I get a little help from the peanut?
I'm the peanut. It's against that sanitary health code to discharge your water softener into your septic system, so it won't be there. And so it'll be typically it's people put it into a little dry well in their yard. Rarely is there. rarely in a subdivision like this are you going to see a black HDPE pipe sticking out the side of the house, squirting out into the yard. It's going to go into a dry well.
So are you preparing those dry wells for the houses? That's my question, that's my concern, is most people just route it into their yard. And with it being protected wetlands in that area, having it discharged into their yard is going to leak into the protected area.
Well, we can, we could accept something like that, write it into the master deed bylaws, et cetera, put it on the plan. We could prescribe that would be done. Most people in a subdivision like that do put it in a dry well. They don't want it out on the ground. And a 15-gallon water softener discharge will not make it to the wetland. It could be, yours might be 50.
Yes.
Mine's 20, but I have hard water. So if he has 50, I have 20, but it's multiple gallons of water softener recharge, and it's not gonna make it to the wetland. It's gonna be contained in the yard, just based on the volume. And the water quality here is quite good. The water was not very hard, and so the water softeners will be set kind of mid-range.
I have a question, I think that might dovetail into Trustee Susie and Clerk Deaton here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm the person living on lots 13, 14, 15, 16, I'm kind of in a peninsula right there. Were there not going to be markings that say, hey, beyond this is protected wetland? There's going to be a delineation, so I know,
Yes.
right, that's no man's land?
Yes.
Right? Okay.
And we've proposed to put those at the wetland limit where Eagle will require those anyway, so.
So people can't like walk around there and walk their dogs or anything?
Well, there's gonna be a sign that says protected wetland, no cutting, no this, no that. No walking is not one of the restrictions. If it's dry enough, because you probably don't wanna walk your dog in the wetland. But you're permitted to walk in a wetland. It's not restricted, but you can't build, you can't mow, you can't cut, you can't move dirt. So those restrictions are put on signs along 50 to 100 foot along the wetland perimeter so that people know where it is, so they can't claim ignorance to doing something in there that they shouldn't.
So in this map here, that whole green area is considered a wetland?
No, ma'am.
Is woods at all or not?
So if you go up to the very first, there you go. Thank you. The blue area is wetlands. The green area is uplands. So all of that will be in a preservation conservation easement. So you can theoretically walk around there. If you find a dry enough spot, you can get across there. You wear your duck boots. You want to go for a walk up in that area. You can certainly get there. Some of the folks from Mountain View, have little paths, little boardwalk across a stream so that they can get up there in dry weather and walk around up there. And by the way, they asked for the right to be able to continue to do that, and we agreed to that, and we're writing it in the master deed that they have the right to enjoy that preserved area as well, meaning they are allowed to walk their dogs, walk themselves around there as well. There's just no great way to get there other than, human ingenuity of find your way, step on stones.
Do you really think, though, that people are going to want to live right next to a swamp?
Do I think they'll want to live there? Certainly, there's already 50 that do.
Yeah, but where you're building, it's pretty wet.
Yeah, but
that's
the upland end. So we're developing the upland side of it. So there's no wetlands in that whole development area that we have, except where you can kind of see a little semicircle. Thank you. Right there, that's the only wetland in the development area. That's the impact that we're talking about. Look at the size of the blue area. The amount of wetland that we're impacting is that little semicircle right there. That's it. That's all the wetlands that we're impacting. Everything else is all upland.
Is that 0.4 acres or?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Okay.
Yes, that's it.
That's that little.
Yep.
So, I'm sorry, could you tell me on those possibly engineered field, what lots those are on? I never finished, I think, my thought process on that.
Yeah, at one time, 13, but we've made 13 larger, and we have to do more, on 13 through 16, I did about 10 holes up there. The way we've reconfigured it to minimize the impact and remove 3 units, I'm gonna have to go back out with the health department and do 3, 4 more. So at one time, 13, because of the existing slopes, that is kind of like a hill there, right? The engineering would have been to create retaining walls or something like that to make sure they had a yard as well as the septic. So that was one of them. 13 is on the bubble. Maybe it needs engineering, maybe it doesn't now, it's much larger. My sense is it won't, but I need to get the perk test done on that. And then 17 at one time was maybe gonna need some engineering, not based on soils, but just based on the slopes. There's a lot of relief through that property. And, you know, you're trying to fit everything on there, and the septic system has to be relatively flat. And so that's what, and we have to do the active and reserve. It ends up being about 4,000 square feet, the flat area, or flat-ish. 17 needed some, we'll say, grading TLC. We made it larger as part of one of the revisions, and there are no test holes on 17 at the moment. Well, there's one on the south, kind of the southeast corner, but I need to do a couple more on there, and I don't know if 17 will need engineering any longer. 18, or 12 is also just based on space requirements, where the perk was good. A little engineering might be needed there, but it's all grading related, and won't be an issue. You're not going to have pre-treatment units or mound systems or anything like that. It's just to make them work.
So you mentioned the 128 units. I was going to mention that this development's gone a long way.
Yeah.
When you first came to the township and started discussions, it was 128 units,
So
which
that
we
was,
knew
that
wasn't
was a
going to.
That was a prior developer. So
Yes.
the same property.
Yes.
But when Pulte put it under contract, our proposal was for 58.
Yes.
And we
So-
come down to 55. But you're right, it has come down a long way, and I think it's worth noting that
Right.
this is a pretty good development. It hits all the high points of your master plan, of having the right number of units for this property, plus it's got all these other benefits and a responsible developer. So.
Right. That development also looked at and wanted to ask for access drive through the subdivision to the east.
Well, and that's what
which-
you see on the parallel plan, is
Yeah.
that there's two access drives, because those are public roads. So theoretically, you could do that on the parallel plan, which is, you can eliminate the emergency access, but you gotta develop the whole property and also inconvenience the folks on Grand Circle and in Mountain View to tie into those public roads.
Right.
And this avoids that too. And so we
I
try
do
to.
appreciate that.
Thank you. We try to avoid as many pitchforks as we possibly can and still make it work.
Right. The off-site sidewalk also, I think, is a huge benefit. I know there was a resident that had confusion on something regarding the sidewalk at the beginning of the meeting, on where it went. Did you get that answered?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was me, and I was thinking, when I see it up there, they have to cross 2 roads
Yes.
to get there, where if they would do it down part, they'd only cross 1. And my other concern is if they walk during the winter, right now, they just come down there and they put salt through the center. And so the road is not always all the way open through there. So if somebody's gonna walk through the winter through there, they're gonna be on ice, or the cars are gonna come down and might not be able to stop there because the road during the winter is not all salt.
So that was a question that I asked the road commission specifically. How would they like that crossing?
And that's their recommendation?
That is, yeah, I frankly had it just on the east side of Bauer. That was option 1, it just made sense, right? 1 crossing. That's what they want. They want to get you away from where cars could be traveling faster coming in and heading out. And even though it's 2 crossings, the northbound Bauer is going to be very low use. And they want to get you in the roundabout to make that second crossing.
You'd be surprised at all the cars that come up there, though, even though it is
Oh, sure.
a dead end, you'd be surprised at all the cars that come up there. My only concern was, it don't really bother me, except if I'm driving, I'm coming down, and that road is slippery because it's not all the way open, and somebody's there. I'm not gonna be able to stop. I'm gonna have to go to one side or the
Right.
other and hit the rocks.
The sidewalk, once you guys put that in, whose responsibility is it to maintain? Is it Genoa Township?
Yep.
That will be, it's a public walk at that
It's not
point.
ours, but
Historically, we
We're on
maintain
public walk.
sidewalks that we install, when developers install them, we have not maintained them.
So that would be their responsibility.
Yeah, so what if there's a slip and fall in the dead of winter on that sidewalk?
Sadly.
Sadly, if that happens, it's a public walk at that point, just like we're connecting to a public walk, and same rules apply.
Yeah, but we're not installing it, you are. That's
Exactly.
your responsibility.
Right. We're going to install it to your standards.
And then you'll have to maintain it.
We won't have to maintain it.
They
No,
won't
they're
maintain it?
just set it and done, is what he's saying.
They're donating it to us.
Is it
They're
lighted?
paying to put it in.
Is it lighted?
It'll be our sidewalk.
Or no?
No.
Couple things. Oh, go ahead, Rob.
sorry. I had a couple more things. The construction entrance. I know there was a lot of discussion at Planning Commission, whether you're going to restrict them from using Bauer Road, or I don't know if that emergency entrance can be used as well as the main entrance for the construction at the beginning to try to keep them off of Bauer.
We can absolutely restrict the construction entrance to Chalice Road, keep the emergency entrance gated off with the fire department Knox lock on there, so that it's only used for its intended purpose, not as a construction access. We don't need it for construction access.
Okay.
And we are willing to restrict it.
Okay. No, go ahead.
So a concern, so we have the wetlands protection, we're going to put up the signs and whatnot. You know, a lot of the world works on the idea that it's better to beg forgiveness than ask permission. Is there going to be some serious teeth into somebody in the homeowner's documents that if you violate the wetlands protection, it will be painful? Sadly, that rings true the higher up in the strata you get in the homes. People lawyer up and figure they can do what they want.
Right. Well, none of the wetlands are on any of the lots, so they
butt up to them, though.
They butt up to them, but they don't own them by any stretch of the imagination. They'd be wholly owned by the homeowners association. In terms of the wetlands, the teeth are really eagle. And I've had several cases where we helped, they got an NOV, not this builder, but another builder, where the existing homeowners, the conservation easement had been in place for 20 years, and after 20 years, like you say, people start to do their thing and start to creep a little bit further, and the DEQ, or the Eagle, went through and sent notices of violation to at least the builder that was building in there that had also violated it, similar to the other homeowners. I don't know if they ever gave it to any of the individual homeowners, but the remedy was restoration. And so that builder had to prepare a plan. How are you going to restore it back to wetland conditions? We went out there and did a survey, prepared a plan for them, showing the wetland plans. They had to install it, and then we had to submit photographic evidence along with an as-built survey to the Eagle to show that the restoration was made, and they made a final walk in there and signed off on it. So sometimes the state is a little bit different on whether they call it a knowing violation or whether it was just a violation that, you know, you made a mistake, right? You mowed too far, you started planting invasive plants or whatever you did. But if somebody that's like a builder or developer that says, oh, I'll ask for forgiveness later, I know what I'm doing is wrong, which would be me and all the gentlemen sitting behind me, they'll come at you hard, which is why we would never do that, which is why we are in the business to be able to get the permits that we need and then comply with the permits that we have. So the risk is really more of individual homeowners, and you're right, Eagle's a little bit easier on them, but they do require restoration.
Well, I would like to see something in the final documents. Also, the area, actually, I misspoke. It won't be the wetland that they'll be going into. It'll be the buffer that they'll go to first, which I don't know if Eagle's going to give a rip about our buffer.
No, they
So-
won't.
No, they don't.
Exactly. So we do.
Yeah.
We care about our buffer. So I would absolutely want to see some language in there about the protection for that buffer, and violations should be, it's not a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, so the landscape buffer, there's already protections in the document that's been reviewed by the township attorney. It's been back and forth a couple times between
Okay.
Bodman, Pulte's attorney, and your attorney, and we can make sure that those are appropriate, that the remedies are appropriate for violations as you're talking.
Okay. Next,
Well, second.
Okay.
I think there's a little difference. Yeah, there's remedies that basically say, if you see something wrong or whatever, the township can go like to court to enforce it, send a ticket, but, to them. But what I'm hearing you say is, you want something defined in the agreement, am I correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you want like if they go into it, there will be,
Monetary fine or something
yeah,
like that.
and that's not in the agreement right now.
That's good. We'd be happy to modify the agreements for that.
Okay.
And keep in mind too that the landscape buffer is not the same as the conservation easement, so they're not prevented from going in there. What they're prevented from doing is putting sheds in there, putting swing sets in there, putting a swimming pool in there.
Cutting the trees down.
Above ground improvements. But you can plant trees, it's a landscape buffer, and it is on their lawn. So they can toss the frisbee and play football and mow the grass. They can't chop down the tree. Those are protected because it's part of the buffer requirement.
Well, we say they can't.
Say-
But if they do, if they do, what is our remedy, other
The
than?
remedy is that the homeowners association would have to replace that tree. They have the right to go in there, and that's already in that agreement. That they have the obligation to maintain that buffer in it, not maintain it on the daily mowing the grass and watering the grass, but to maintain it as its original purpose, which is a landscape buffer. So if a tree comes down, the HOA's got to put one back up.
Okay, Joe, you're going to work on the language to make sure we're comfortable with that.
Yes, but I would like some direction as to what do you think the penalty, or is your word, heat, should be. That really has to come from the board as to what you want the penalty to be.
Okay.
Right now, the ordinance is pretty lenient for what the penalty, financial penalty might be for that. I would like to see it beefed up, something substantial, to make it very clear, do not mess with it. So I would be proposing something like $25,000 penalty for violation of that.
Okay, and if that's what the board decides,
Oh, yeah.
then we'll work with, the attorneys to write that in there. But right now, that is not in the agreement.
Seems heavy, but
Yes.
you would get their attention, I
That's the
suppose.
point.
It would. The problem is, people lawyer up and figure, are we going to spend the people's money to go try and restore one tree or 3 trees behind one house in this subdivision? I don't want to do that. I want the neighborhood association to do that for me. Because people will come in and cut down trees. I've seen it 1,000 times, probably 10,000. So the other problem or issue that I had, and you've done a great job. I mean, I really do appreciate the back and forth. You've done almost everything we've asked for, and I do appreciate that. But in the total clear cut of the development area, you did mention that, it has to be done and the trees won't survive. So my subdivision was built in 1988, and they preserved a lot of trees, and to this day, I still have those walnuts in my backyard. I despise it every time I have to pick those walnuts up, but I am glad that those trees are back there. It was 1988, still going pretty strong, so it's tough to complain. Pine Creek Ridge saved an enormous amount of trees. There has not been a massive amount of death. There's been some pine trees that died due to funguses and blights and that sort of thing, but a lot of the deciduous trees and a lot of the pines that were saved are still doing just fine. That stuff was constructed in 1992. Over in the Dominion, the initial builder saved tons and tons of trees. This developer did come in and massacre that property, and people were very, very, very upset about that. Brighton Township had to redo their tree ordinance because of it. And then finally, Copperleaf subdivision here in Genoa, the initial builder, same thing, saved tons and tons of trees, all still alive. And at some point, we had the recession, and a new builder came in and did the we just cut everything method, which looks kind of silly. And then they replace everything with a Home Depot twig. At the very least, if you're going to cut down some big trees, there needs to be some big trees put back.
Yeah, well, Pulte's never shied away from planting, the trees that are required, and in some cases in excess of the sizes that are required. I mean, a street tree, for example, is usually a 2.5 to 3 inch diameter shade tree. And typically, when I planted, 1.5, probably 2.5 inch maple trees in my yard, and I also spaded a 6 inch at the same time. But crimson maple got lapped by the sugar maples that I planted at 2.5 inch because it kind of stunts it when you
Different,
use
yep,
that
different
spade
trees,
tree.
different,
So,
yep.
I mean, they do a great job on their landscaping. They're not shy about that, but they're certainly planning to mass grade, mass develop this site all at one time. What you're talking about, is more like a custom type of build, where you're building custom houses and notching them out, making them all match the existing grade. That's not what we're talking about here. This is still a production home site. If you were going to build these houses as a custom home site, it'd probably be twice as much, about 1.5 million instead of 800, 750, 800. Just simply because of what you're talking about surgically doing these on an individual basis. I had 3 trees taken out of my house in Plymouth this year. It cost me $8,000. Whereas you can clear an acre with 100 trees on it for $6,200 on a mass basis. So when you're talking about production housing, production development, it's a little different than some of the custom development. And Pulte is a production builder, and they're proposing to develop this site all at one time, all in one phase, and that includes the clearing as well.
Can I make a quick point, Mike?
Please.
Also, I want to highlight the fact that you probably live in a conventional subdivision that looks like our parallel plan, where the lots are spread out over the entire site. We've used your cluster ordinance, and so we've taken the 58 and squished them down into 55 into a very specific area, concentrated the activity. We could spread it out and have those single trees lingering on those bigger lots. Some of those on the west side were 2 acre lots. So using the cluster ordinance to save we would never be able to save as many trees as we are with this development. But we've shrank it all down, put it in one place. That's why it has to be completely graded and all the trees removed to allow the development in that 50 acre part. But what we're able to do, though, is create a contiguous open space area of hardwoods and wetlands, and if we love our flora and fauna, they're going to enjoy that wide open area, void of any houses or driveways or roads that we can preserve over on the west side. A conventional subdivision, you're going to have those sprinkling of trees because it's not a cluster style development.
Now, with your parallel plan, are you insinuating that you could just go through and massacre all those ones too?
It would be not necessary to massacre all of those too, but you would lose more trees, spreading the development out over the site. There'd be more roads, there would be longer driveways.
No, absolutely. I totally get it. I prefer this plan to the parallel, but I'm just trying to clarify if you're, are you just suggesting, should we not go for this? We'll just come in and massacre the whole piece.
No, I don't think Brian or myself are intending it as a threat. It's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that by right, that's what the plan would look like. And we think that this is better for a lot of the reasons. And I mentioned that, that there's 5,000 trees roughly in the preservation area, and that if you were to develop half the area, you might be clearing 2,000 trees. To your point, maybe not. Maybe it's 1,000. That's still a 50% increase over the 2,159 trees that we know we're clearing under this particular proposal. So no, it's not meant as a threat. It's meant more as a comparison basis to say, isn't this better? We think it is, and we hope you do too.
Okay, and absolutely, it protects the residents of Mount View, which is very important to me. I guess a big chunk of my problem comes right around those 104 landmark trees, and I get it, you want to just go through and clear everything down to the bone. I guess I'm struggling a little bit as to why we can't work with some of those landmark trees.
So, a landmark is defined, at least in your package under the draft resolution, as anything over 24-inch DBH. And the three trees I had cleared out of my yard this year were right between 36 and 40 inch. And they were silver maples back when Plymouth was, my house was built in 1940. And so when Plymouth was built, these trees are 100 years old. And they really reached the end of their useful life. They went, the first time I got hit by a branch and they had some damage, we repaired it. The second time we just repaired it. And the third time, it went through the brick wall and we had $60,000 of damage to our house. A bit of a twister kind of came through there and took a big chunk of that tree off. But when we took it down, the tree was hollow inside. The tree was rotten. So.
But I don't think anyone wants to save a diseased tree.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is a lot of times, like, I fell in love with those trees. That's why I bought on that street, and they were these big trees, and we decorated them for Christmas and all that good stuff. But my point is that it's not necessarily the biggest tree in the community that you want to save. You want to save the one that is the most sustainable. And what is sustainable is preserving these in large groups, the way that they grew up. Right, and you're probably better off to save 12, 14, 16-inch caliper diameter trees than you are trying to save an 85-inch oak, because that tree is already 150 years old and its useful lifespan is going to naturally be less.
So I'm good with that too.
What's that?
We can save some 16 to 18s. I'm good.
Yeah, and we are. Yeah. We're saving 5,000.
He's only doing the buffer area, is what he's talking
Well,
about.
yeah. No, I get that, but I'm talking about in where the homes will be. I get, so in a way, you're kind of saying that, even though Genoa has had a bunch of these custom developments, we don't want to do that.
This is not what our proposal is, no.
Well, and looking at your landscape plan, your intent is to replace
Yes, ma'am.
a lot of trees.
Yeah, I mean, if my dad used to work in American Center over in Southfield. It was the American Motors Building. It's a law firm now, but when you look out over there and you look out over Southfield, it looks like a jungle because of all the tree canopy that you have over there. Once it's fully developed and you start to have these new trees, this is going to be chock full, just like if you go through any of your mature developments. I drive through Island Lake and Novi and North Little's Golf Club, some of the things that I developed when I was a young man. I was on the team. I didn't own it or anything. I just was a guy working there, right? But they look fantastic. All of the trees that were planted have grown up and matured, and you do have the perimeter tree saves that we were just able to save there. So not every tree can be saved, and I don't think you're asking us to save every tree. And in fact, your ordinance doesn't require it, and I don't think you are either.
No, I'm not asking that at all.
I think we're only cutting. I know it sounds like a lot of trees, but we're only cutting 30% of the trees on the site. It's
All in one area, though.
It's all in
And you
one
get that
area.
kind of looks a little odd that we're going and we have all this great woods.
Well, but we have
And then we have a clear-cut field with some nice homes, beautiful homes, where we put in some Home Depot tree. 2.5 inches is, that's not spectacular. It's not knocking me over by any stretch of the
Well, but
imagination.
it will at a certain point when the neighborhood matures. And then remember too that each one of these folks that are going to come in are going to landscape their yard. That's just the starter, right? If you're going to go come in and you're going to pay $800,000 for a house, you're gonna do some landscaping in your yard, you know, you're gonna.
You would hope.
You-
It depends what's required in the documents. You have
Yeah,
some
there's-
people that belong there, and then you have some people that maybe they've stretched themselves a little thin, and they want to be in there, so they're going to go ahead and maybe cut a corner here and there.
That's true. You
And
may-
we don't want to look at that.
No, you may see some of that, you're right. You just can't predict who your individual buyer is
We
going to
don't,
be for any
can't.
particular home, but you can set minimum standards for what landscaping is required. You can certainly put that in the documents. I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, this site is going to be, if it's approved, is intended to be mass graded to prepare the road beds, mass graded to remediate the septic areas that need to be remediated, to be cut down. It's going to be mass graded so that when they excavate the basements, that they can spread the spoils on the lot and still meet the proposed final grades. That's a hold down, mass grade hold down. It's going to be mass graded to create the basin that is required. It's going to be mass graded when the utilities are put in, and the utility spoils, the franchise utilities. So there's a lot going on here. It's not just simply we're going to be matching. To save a tree, you have to match the existing grade, and your ability to do that is limited when you're developing a subdivision like this. And that is what we're proposing to do. Yes, sir.
Shouldn't that be determined as part of that final site plan, though, when we see the final grading plan, and you can really determine where you need to clear and where you don't?
It will be part of the final site plan, but I don't want there to be any misconceptions here. Is that the final site plan, we may be able to save a tree or two, an extra one here or there. Maybe there's, you know, one between lots or on rear lot lines where we can match the existing grade and get lucky and save a nice redwood that's out there. That's a possibility, but that is an exception to the rule. I mean, these 2,000 trees are going to be cleared, and maybe it's not 2,159, maybe it's 2,100, and we get lucky and save 59 trees. We'll know that in the final, but I don't want to come here and pretend in front of you that there's going to be a significant difference between what you see today in our proposed clearing and grading area and what you see at the final, because I would be doing you a disservice and I would be doing my client a disservice, because they've developed enough of these subdivisions to know that they have to grade it. They have to grade this site, and we might be able to pick up a couple extra saves, but it won't be significant in terms of the weight of the whole.
Well, I think it's safe to say that a consensus up here tonight is try. When you get to final site plan and get in there, do what you can. Instead of just saying, nope, we're just plowing everything.
Well, we can try, but I don't want your expectation to be, I don't want your expectation to be that we're going to be very successful, particularly if you look at this and you look at the hedgerows in the middle, there's no way. If you look at some of the stuff in the upper corners, those woods over there, yeah, I bet we can save a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen. We could tweak our grading plan to save those perimeters, to make that perimeter planting area bigger. But to think that lot 22 in the middle where that T is going to have a mature tree on it it's not realistic.
You know, people live out here because they like the rural aspect of the community. They're not going to want to see you do that.
Well, but they get the rural aspect. There's 127.
Not the people that live in Mountain View. They're not going to see that.
Well, if you look at this aerial right now, you can see Mountain View. Where's the open space in Mountain View? Here we're going to have, 58 acres of open space. You can see I highlighted it in green. I know they like the open space, and that's why this is a beneficial plan, because they like the open space that's in the adjacent property. And we want to preserve that open space for them to continue to enjoy, as well as for our residents to enjoy. But to do that, to save, 60% of the property in open space, you have to develop something. And that's why we're developing it to the prescription in your master plan, which says 58 units is what we want on this 127 acres. If we have 2 acres to the unit over here, it's
55.
still rural.
55.
55, right, that's right. Excuse me.
Don't
did I
add
say
the 3 back
58?
in.
You did say 58.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I've been talking too long, but it's, you can still, this is no, Kensington Ridge Del Lab, with 830 units. This is 55 units on 127 acres. So you still have the large lot feel. You have massive amounts of preservation and some public benefit. We just thought this would be something that would appeal to you as a body, because when you look at the alternatives, what you can do on straight zoning, or what some of the prior applicants have thought of for this property, why not do 55 beautiful homes with a bunch of preservation and some public benefit in it? It's a great plan. It's one of the least dense plans that I've ever represented.
I will not dispute that, but I would like to see some teeth in the landscaping requirements.
Certainly.
So that it doesn't look like a cornfield in the middle of a, wetland.
Certainly, and we've done that on different developments where we required, homeowners to plant minimum of 5 or 8 trees or whatever on their lot, and the developer backed it up by the end. If they didn't do it, then they would plant additional trees in the common areas or whatever. It's hard to control somebody else's lot. If they're going down trees and they've resisted that far, then we have to find some other areas. But we've done that before as well in Superior Township.
Just one more. We had a couple of residents that I think are still here tonight that brought up the issue of traffic volume and safety concerns. So can you tell me what is built into this proposal to make sure that we're not jamming and cramming cars and getting them at high speed, and how is the traffic flow assessment done? And is that a real concern of the citizens right here? Is this going to worsen the condition of life for them?
No, because we did a traffic impact study already. And it was performed by Fleece and Vanderbrink. Julie Kroll was the engineer there that did the report. A general rule of thumb, just an off the bat rule of thumb, is that you multiply the number of units by 10, you get the total daily trips from a development. So this development, 55 units, is going to generate 500, 550 trips in the day over the course of the entire day. The bulk of them are in the morning rush, and then the evening rush, about half and half. So, let's call that 200 in the morning rush, 200 in the evening rush, and the rest of them scattered throughout the day. That's the gist of what the traffic report says. And then what the traffic report does is it takes your background generation. So we go out and we do actual counts on the roads. And so they take a look at what the construction was at the time. Do they need to use SEMCOG data? Because SEMCOG keeps the data. And they already had great data for the construction of the roundabout at Bauer and Chalice Road. So they take what our generated traffic is, what the background traffic is, so they look at that. You got that other development, apartment complex or something with a bunch of units that people were concerned about whether it was in there or not. And we said yes, because we always inflate the background, the traffic that we measure by a certain percentage dictated by the road commission to account for additional development known and unknown in the area. And the planning commission sent us back to get that confirmed in writing from our traffic engineer, and she did that. So Julie Kroll sent a letter to the planning commission saying, yep, we have it. She went and got the traffic study from that apartment complex and showed that the background was already in our inflated background. So what we plan to do by, there you go, thank you. What they did was they increased the counted traffic to adjust for other developments in the area, and then added ours into it. And what it concluded is that it won't impact the traffic at all. And one of the things that it pointed out was that the roundabout is so far overdeveloped, because you don't get to build a new roundabout every 5 years as it grows. So that has enough volume going through there that it's just a small fraction right now of what it has the capability of handling. And it also pointed out that when they did that, they were using and 28 units from our site instead of the 55 that we're proposing. So it's even more overdeveloped. So yes, we did the traffic study. Yes, it concluded that there would be no significant change to the traffic issue as a result of this development. And it was reviewed by your engineers, and the questions from your planning commission were answered directly by the traffic consultant.
So you guys incorporated the development at Door Road and Grand River into that study.
Yes.
Did you take into account on the other side by the land over by MJR Theater? Brighton is looking at 800 units over there.
800 apartments.
800 apartments on the other side of it. There's going to be a lot of traffic through this area.
Yeah. I work over
Not
there.
your concern.
It's terrible traffic right now.
It's bad all over.
I would just assume that Brighton would have bellied to the bar and said, I have to do a traffic study of 800, and they're all, you know, we're tiny little potatoes compared to 800. I mean, they would have a heck of a traffic study to do.
But so we just, you know, Pulte just did one over at Kensington Ridge that has 830 units, and the Oakland County Road Commission had them add a whole nother lane all the way down Milford Road, along with some other turn lanes and passing lanes and acceleration lanes. And so really, if Brighton is going to bring in 800 units, they still got to get their approval from the county for their road access. And the counties are in the business of trying to hold developers to increase the traffic that's reflective of their traffic study. And in this particular case, it's a drop in the bucket. I mean, I hate to say it that way. I don't mean to be facetious about it, but 55 units is not a lot when you're looking at, you know, average daily volumes on these big roads of 40,000 cars, you know, so.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Going back to the path.
Yes, sir.
I think it would be, so Genoa Township, 20 years down the road, when the path is crumbling up and you need to replace it, I don't think that we should have to foot the bill to replace that. Putting some language together to put the onus on you guys to replace the path that you built as it needs to be maintained or rebuilt, I think that would be fair.
I mean, the only way to do that would be to create a sinking fund. So I've done that on other developments. I mean, it basically, you seed it in, you put $25,000 in an account, and nobody can touch it ever until they got to rebuild the path. And by the time 50 years goes by, that $25,000 is $250,000, and they can rebuild the path. Other than that, when you build a public improvement and you dedicate it over to a municipality or a road commission, they own it and maintain it. You know, so like I have to maintain my sidewalk in front of my house and have to pay for that. But you know, when you're talking about an off-site path improvement, it's very rare that any homeowners association would maintain that in perpetuity.
Well, and honestly, it's very rare a developer agrees to do off-site improvements like this.
Yeah,
I mean, legally, we can't make you do it.
No, you can't, but we're offering it, and we know it's a significant improvement. It's several $100,000s of improvements.
Right.
And so if you're asking me, well, will we do it twice or will we do it 3 times? I think the answer is no. I mean, like I say, we would, you know, we generally dedicate it over, and to the extent that like during development, we'll pull the agree to keep it cleared, you know, keep it salted or keep it cleared. They could probably stomach that, you know, if it was just a sinking fund where the HOA, I mean, ultimately these are going to be your constituents later on, that, you know, if you strap them with a huge, you know, improvement cost later, it doesn't seem fair to them.
Well, I guess I'm leaning to Joe over here, since it is an off-site improvement, which by law they don't have to do. Are they required to?
Well, right now you're doing a PUD agreement, so this is something that you could negotiate. One of the questions that's not real clear to me is how much of it is within the road right-of-way and how much is it not? Because that's where the township faces potential liability for anything that happen is within the road right-of-way. If it's not in the road right-of-way, then it would be the property owner.
It's 100% in the road right away, so.
Really?
so, Yeah,
It
100%.
looked like it dipped.
So,
but-
I mean, it starts at the entrance, which is in the road right away, yeah.
Okay.
We go back to, like the overall site plan, up a couple slides.
But this is, and forget the crass, this is a free upgrade at the request of the residents and icing on the cake from the planning commission, correct? That you guys are doing for hundreds of thousands of dollars out of the kindness of your heart, out of your deep pockets to benefit. It's one of the things you put in your sales pitch is a benefit to the community.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
And now what I hear asking is eventually, at some point down the road, Mother Nature ravages this sidewalk
Yeah.
and you're being asked to foot the bill to tear it up and replace it. A freebie that you gave the township to start with.
It'll be the
Right.
residents' responsibility of Genoa Township to pay for that out of the tax dollars.
It's like, do we need a new budget item for their gift?
Yeah, no.
Down the line.
I mean, you're talking way on.
Well,
way
we
down-
maintain,
Way down the road and maintenance on
We
it,
spend
too.
big money already maintaining a lot of sidewalks, having them plowed and salted.
I know
and
it.
Cutting the grass around them, so that's why, that was the question that I initially wondered, like whose responsibility is that gonna be?
Well, I think if, and this is just me, and it may not be a popular opinion, if they're doing it at our request as a bonus, right? As an attraction for walking paths, right? That's a future want. Then I think that if we need to come up with an additional future budget line item to maintain 1,000 feet of sidewalk, plus some crosswalks, to be able to have that benefit and claim it long-term, then maybe that's just something we need to plan for. When is that sidewalk going in? 3 years from now, 2 years from now?
No, I mean, if we, probably a year from now.
Okay, so the 2026, 2027 budget, maybe that's a line item.
Well, I mean, you
Maintenance
got
for sidewalks.
55, you got 55 units in there, so there's probably 2 years of construction, you know, over the course of that, when, you know, we're putting this walk in there, it really won't require much maintenance in the first beginning of the years, other than clearing, you know.
Right.
and Genoa Township already maintains a lot of sidewalk. So this would be an additional sidewalk for our residents to use, not just the residents of this subdivision.
Who cuts the grass around that area, do you know? Who cuts the
Around
grass?
what?
The Livingston
Around the
County Road
roundabout?
Commission is
Livingston.
responsible for.
Road Commission? Okay.
I don't have an issue with the township being responsible for it going forward.
So all-
If you're gonna put it in.
In the roundabout, Kelly, that's all,
Yeah, so all of
All
this,
the yellow is what they're proposing to put in.
I understand, but who cuts the grass there?
the County Road Commission owns all of this property in through here.
Okay.
We're connecting to an existing pathway, and that pathway was installed as part of that road program, so that's our small bit of the pathway will be part of a maintenance program later on. Whoever's gonna maintain that southerly pathway will, that little bit will just be part of that maintenance program down the road.
Okay.
And hopefully someone will extend the pathway further
Right.
to the west, and that's how you get the network.
Okay.
Would there be a crosswalk that you guys put in with flashing lights? I'm just curious, like now I look at them and you gotta cross that roundabout.
So it won't have
That could be
flashing lights.
dangerous.
It won't have flashing lights, it'll be similar to the two crosswalks that are out there.
Okay.
They're just pedestrian cross, look both ways, cross. And the nice thing about the roundabout is that is where people are to yield, so typically that's where they're slowing down.
The crosswalks in downtown Brighton are absolutely amazing. They flash, there's a button you can hit.
Yeah.
That would be ideal for something like that because that is such a busy intersection.
Too bad we don't collect city taxes to pay for that.
Right.
Yes.
All right, Kelly, I guess my question for you is, in Amy's memo, that the board received, the rezoning is pretty straightforward if this board so chooses to make the motion to approve. But on the PUD agreement, she's got it to postpone the approval. And in that particular paragraph, item 4, I think is where the developer has an issue. So I guess we would be looking at just removing item 4.
Well, I mean, I think that particular issue really comes up as part of final site plan review. So they've already indicated that they are doing a tree survey, that they've done a tree survey. So part of that will be before you for final site plan review.
Okay.
A plan that shows removal of all of the trees, and the board will need to approve it. So.
Okay.
One note I guess I have about Amy's recommended motion is that she's recommending postponement of the PUD agreement, but approval of the rezoning. And I really would prefer, if we're going to postpone the PUD, that the rezoning be postponed as well, because once you rezone it to a PUD, you should really have a development agreement that the board agrees with and supports.
Agreed.
So my recommendation would be to postpone both those items or all these items and allow these issues to get resolved before it comes back to the
So
board.
what's the reasoning for the wording postpone versus table?
So table is to put it on the table to be brought back up.
The next
typically at the same meeting. Postpone is used when you're pushing it to a future meeting.
Okay.
Not putting it just on the table, but pulling it off, postponing it for it to come back at a future meeting.
Okay.
So can I ask, what is the reason for postponing it? Like, will you tell us that in the motion, like what the reason is? Because we need to be able to react to something, right? So if you're postponing it because you object to 50 acres of clearing, we should know that. If you're postponing it because you want to make sure that the teeth are in the remedies for violators of the wetland, or that we work out some of the other items that we talked about, can we specifically say what we're postponing it for so that we know whether or not we can even comply? We have a to-do list to go back and, or if you're just like, no, we're not going to allow you to clear the trees here, then we know that that's the reason, and we can know that we can't get it done.
Right. So coming from Planning Commission and the county, the recommendation is to postpone. Number 1 is the PUD agreement shall include a requirement that at least 30% of the homes in the development shall have a setback at least 10 feet from the standard minimum to encourage variation in front setback lines to avoid a monotonous row of houses and to create a more visually appealing and
We would
dynamic.
agree to that tonight. If that were a condition of approval, we would agree to that, because if you look at the plan, we already have, I mean, they're only saying 30% of the houses. We already have 80% of the houses are on curved roads, so you don't have the monotonous road. There's only 2 streets that it could possibly apply to anyways, so we're already in compliance before we start, so we could agree to that.
Okay. Number 2, the PUD agreement shall include a tree preservation section, which you do. Shall include requirements for tree preservation and protection, which I think you already have. This section shall also include standards for protection of oak trees from oak wilt disease.
Yeah, and so that one is easy to agree to, except for there's 2 different ways that oak wilt gets spread. So when you prune a tree, sap-eating beetles will come and they'll feed on that wound, and they'll pick up fungus and they'll move it to another oak tree. That's one way that oak wilt spreads. The other is through the roots. When you cut off the tree, it'll spread through the roots. But in terms of, if you're clearing and disposing, let's say you had a tree that had oak wilt and you were clearing and disposing that, it wouldn't have to fall between April 15th and October 15th. That's if you're pruning them. You don't want to prune them because those are more susceptible. That's when the beetles are out. That's when the sap is running. That's when it'll kill an oak tree in a month to 3 months. Just bang, especially the reds. So,
so no pruning.
No pruning between those dates. Clearing, you should be allowed to clear. If you're clearing 50 acres wall to wall, that's not gonna spread the oak wilt unless you already have a tree, and that requires special handling. And we can agree to that too, if that clarification is acceptable.
Well, we'll have to make sure.
So, I mean, or revise it that any tree with oak wilt shall be removed.
Yeah, that we can agree to. I mean, I mean, do you want us to do you want us to go into the preserve area to remove?
No, I'm just trying to
Will be removed off.
clarify it.
Or if you're gonna trim an oak, it has to be at the right time of the year. That's totally acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd want to have you propose some language and a revised development agreement for us to review and respond
Okay.
to as it relates to oak wilt.
All right.
Joe, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Yes. So trustee Susie made a mention, and so did you, about if there's a violation of the buffer, that there would be some penalty. That really should come from this board as to what that penalty is. So, we're not negotiating it, it's your direction. Yeah. And the required minimal landscaping, I don't know that that has to be in the PUD agreement. It could be in the master deed when that comes up. But certainly some type of direction would be appropriate. The issue about the limitation on the fertilizer, I think that can be in the master deed also, or the bylaws for the condo. But I would suggest that you give direction now as to that.
Now and not in final?
Well, see, yes, maybe, but Planning Commission does the final site plan. The board does the environmental impact. So I'm thinking that this would be a good time to give direction.
Okay.
And just to add my 2 cents to that, I mean, I think putting it in the development agreement sets the tone then for what the expectation is for your final site plan, your impact assessment, and your master deed and bylaws, right? If the PUD agreement says the master deed and bylaws shall contain these provisions, we're putting that in place now that'll help guide that future. I had a couple other notes, the low or no phosphorus fertilizers, the pre-plumbing radon testing, penalties for tree removal, softener dry wells, construction traffic restriction to the main entrance on Chalice Road, and then wetland encroachment violation penalties as well.
And water softener discharge.
That's what she said
Yep,
about
the
the driveway.
softener dry wells.
Dry well, okay.
I still have an issue with the shared driveways, though. I wish that there was a way that we could limit those shared driveways.
Yeah, I love what we're doing here, but we've been doing this for 2.5 hours, and 5 minutes would be a really nice thing right about now.
Break.
Just putting that out there.
I was certainly hoping we could make it through the end of the presentation, but it's not unreasonable, and I could certainly use probably more like 8. I don't know if there'll be a big line there at the room or not, but I'm going to run. So I guess with that, hopefully everybody understands the reason. I would like to call for, let's just make it a nice 10-minute recess, and we will reconvene.
Thank you.
No, we
technically
already-
didn't make a motion to recess, I just recessed it.
That's fine, so we don't need a motion to go back.
No, we do not need a motion to go back, so.
There's no reason why
You go?
All set, Mr.
Okay, are we all set? Okay, we will reconvene the meeting as of 9:11. Took an extra minute there.
No problem.
Okay, with that, does anyone else on the board have any more further questions?
Yeah, being it's a condo concept for the zoning, does that mean the homeowner association is going to be in control of the landscaping, cutting the grass, fertilizing, all that kind of stuff?
Just in the common areas, not on the limited common elements, what you would normally refer to as a lot. So there's no real difference between a site condo and a platted community, except for the mechanism of how you create those different units. So each homeowner will do his own lawn maintenance, and the homeowners association will do the common areas like the detention basin, the front entrance, and any of the open space.
Snow removal, what part?
Not included, nope.
Maybe the roads, though.
Well, the roads will be, because they'll be private, so Pulte will initially set that up and take care of that over the course of the build, and then the HOA dues will pay for the annual snow plowing contracts, just like most private developments do.
The fact that it's called site condo is so confusing to everyone, because the word condo shouldn't be in it. It's single-family homes.
It is, it's just a way of legally designating it, instead of walking the plat around the county to 10 different stops on a Mylar. It's just a quicker and easier way to do it, but I've lived in site condos and I've lived in platted communities, there's no difference. It doesn't mean your neighbor can come on your yard.
The only
anytime they
difference
want.
between a site condo and a platted sub is a platted sub takes 10 years of development, and a site condo is 3 to 5 years, or 2 to 5 years, actually, depending on, how quickly they get things through. But a site condo, you have to have common area and rules and regulations. In a platted sub, you just go through the township and go by their rules and regulations. And so if you have common area and they make it as private, they maintain the roads, have an HOA and a board. So those are the only differences.
I would like to make a suggestion if it's appropriate. I think that, in general, I spoke to, my client over the break, and, there's nothing that we're batting around here other than the clearing, with phosphorus and the penalties and the signage and where is it located, that we can't work out in the final PUD agreement, which will come before this board again. And so I think it would behoove us, because we would like to try, if you're open to this concept of these 55 units in this general configuration, with the parameters that we've laid out, to move the rezoning along so that we can still move forward with this project to the final engineering. And we can work with somebody that you designate, whether it's Mr. Reber, who is the liaison between the Planning Commission and the board, or your attorney, Mr. Seward, or your staff, Ms. Van Martner, to work out those details. And it comes before you again, so you can always say, oh, that wasn't the amount of teeth I thought it was, or this satisfied me. But I would like to, I feel like we may be going in circles here, and I would like to remind us that it's the rezoning here that we're really talking about. 55 units on 127 acres in this general configuration, with some of these items to be worked out. We're just never going to work it out in a public meeting in this type of form, as to what all the dotting the i's and crossing the t's on the particular document is. So if you're open to that, I would like to see it move forward that way, if it's something that suits the board.
My concern, and Joe, please correct me if I'm wrong, once we've opened Pandora's box, if we have a fall apart in our PUD agreement, which I think we're close enough that we can work it out, but I've seen crazier things happen, then Pandora's box is open and we can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Yes, if you rezone it, there would have to PUD, and there's a falling out on the PUD agreement, the rezoning still sticks.
Right.
So then, and that's one of my concerns. I understand.
And I do appreciate,
But don't you need the final PUD agreement before you can move forward with it? So you still have the hammer, right? How would you, I mean, it may be rezoned, but you can't do anything without the final PUD.
But it's still rezoned PUD.
Right, but without
Right.
the agreement, you can't do anything.
Correct.
That's accurate, until you have the PUD agreement, the site plan approval and so forth. There can't be any type of clear cutting or any construction on it. That's accurate, but to your question, once it's rezoned PUD today, that sticks with the property.
Right.
So,
And we pay you the big bucks because we want your opinion. Are you comfortable with a rezoning without a PUD agreement in place?
The one concern that I have is the penalty for violating, getting into the buffer. Because I heard $25,000. I don't know if that's a consensus of the board. And I'm not so sure. I heard Pulte say, yeah, we would pay that.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like the penalty fits the crime. If you violate a
Does not.
landscape easement and cut down a tree, a replacement tree costs $600, not $25,000. So I appreciate the trustee's point that I want it to sting a little bit, but sting times
sting a lot.
Sting times 5. I don't know if that really
25 seems
is
excessive.
reasonable.
But I will say the big concern is a lot of people that have access to funds, so to speak, love to threaten lawyers. Sue me. And we'd like to avoid that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
So that is the reason. I'm not going to lie, that might be a little much, but I think a stiffer penalty than a slap on the wrist is a must.
And I think that that's probably what I am hearing might be the biggest stumbling block. So if the board is interested in moving forward with the rezoning, I would hope that there'd be some type of direction given to Pulte, at least as to that, to make sure that they are comfortable with that sting.
Okay.
Well, with all the things that have been talked about back and forth, and the fact that we have the rezoning and the PUD agreement, the environmental impact assessment, site plan to be voted on supposedly tonight, I am going to make a motion to postpone the approval for ordinance Z2504. This postponement has been made because of the additional information that we need for the PUD, for the environmental impacts assessment, and the site plan are too vague right now for us to feel comfortable in passing this at this point. So I'm moving to postpone the approval of the ordinance C-2504.
Okay, real quick, we do need to have public comment as part of our hearing. So before we make a motion, we need to do call to the public, even though I know probably everybody spoke ahead of time. I believe for procedural reasons, we need to have the call to the public portion of the hearing. So if we could just hold that thought for a moment. I would like to open the floor for call to the public on this hearing.
My name is Bonnie Spyher. I live at 5606 Mountain Road. I've lived here 45 years. When they purchased the property, they knew the zoning. 2.5 acres per house, okay? Now they're here, they want rezoning. I disagree with the rezoning. I think that how this township was zoned is perfect for what the people moved here for, to have countryside, to have open land. And I've seen what these kind of houses do in that amount of space. 3/4 acres for a house with septics and wells, that's a problem. I listened to all your problems that they're gonna have, and I think that we do not need rezoning. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Agnieszka Bispikas. I live at 2511 Little Sunset Trail. I have a couple notes all over scattered because it was a long presentation, so I really appreciate all the detail. The fastest one is the cross points at the roundabout. At first, my initial thought was crossing at a roundabout when everyone's trying to exit it. I feel like everyone's exiting at a high speed, they're entering at a low speed, but I understand that was through the transportation, so thank you for that clarification. I want to say thank you to Clerk Deaton for clarifying the site condo versus a regular build. We appreciate those details because we don't do this for a living, so it's nice to have this clarification during these meetings. I also want to speak to the fact that I looked at the typical unit detail on these, and with a 3/4 of an acre, I recently moved here a year ago, and we moved here because we wanted the open land, we wanted the big country feel. When we're looking for properties, we're looking for nothing less than an acre. That was our search field. We found that here in Genoa Township, and not only did we find that on our property, but our surrounding properties. So I know that sometimes in the development comes in, it can become very clustered. It can feel a little more contained. I would like to just express my opposition to the deviation of the 1 acre. I looked at the typical unit detail. The front yard was all septic, so you really can't do much there from my understanding. The sides were like 30 to 20 feet, so then your neighbor has 20 to 30 feet, so you're not looking at too much of an area. So it's a big house on a small piece of property. I would love to see this, if we're gonna develop it, to be more of the open areas where we can keep some of the trees, we can plant more trees. With all these septics, you don't want those roots going into the trees and the landscaping that people do. I think that covers all my points, but I do also want to express the gratitude to the developer. You guys are really presenting something way better than what was presented initially. We appreciate it. I think just personally, I'd like to see the vision of the township to keep it more green area. So.
And like I said, they only go one time right down the center for the winter, and what happens? Probably not that many people will be walking during the winter, but you don't know, all it takes is that one time for somebody to get hit, and that scares me. And also is, I'm really concerned about the wells. I know they say there's a limit on the wells. They're only good, say, for 10 years, but if they put those other 55 wells in, then it might not be good for 10 years. It may drop to 8, it may drop to 5, because we're using that much more water. And we went through it once with a ski lodge, and our water went down. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hello again, my name is Blake. I live on Chalice Road. The first point I want to make is this development does not benefit current residents at all. It is only going to have issues that are going to, happen forever, like increased traffic. Is this going to be a safe area? Who knows? The second thing I want to point out is my day job. I'm an urban forester with a municipality, and I would like as much information as I could from this group and you guys, maybe through Freedom of the Information Act, whatever, about any tree ordinances, any, the 2,000 plus trees that are going to be removed. I would like all that information if possible. And these guys talked a lot about how they use buzzwords like sustainability, environmentally friendly. That has enough, being environmentally friendly and sustainable does not include clear cutting 2,000 plus trees. I think we should leave this area as an agricultural land like it was put in place decades ago, because this area is being built up way too much. We've all moved out here to have it not be like a Novi and not be like a Farmington Hills. There's too many developments we're being surrounded now by development. There's that 200 unit development right there. I think this is enough for now. I don't believe we should keep on racing to develop our green spaces. Sure, we have parks and all that, but 10, 20, 30 years down the road, when I'm in my 40s and 50s and 60s, are we going to be surrounded by only built environments? So I hope that's not the case. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Still Dan Cashin, still 6385 Grand Circle. I just want one point of clarification. I don't know if I can address them, so I'll address you. With the wells. So we've talked about a hydrogeological study that said punching 55 wells is not going to affect the wells in Mountain View. I guess what I need to know is, did that study model a reduction in recharge? Because by definition, a detention pond is going to reduce recharge. So if that's all worked in, then that makes a lot of sense and fine and good. But if it's not, then we still have an issue, I think. And my second point is with the landscaping, the planting of the trees, are those trees going to be something that blends in with the tree saves, or are they going to be, Crimson King maples that look like the Brady Bunch? I guess that's an important point for me too. Thanks.
Thank you.
Zenon Charney, I'm Grand Circle. I still want to raise a concern. I'm not a civil engineer. I don't know a lot of these studies, but when I hear that there's going to be a change to the grading in the new development, I'm still concerned about the runoff and what that's going to do for the overall aspect of water for Mountain View. And again, being one of the lower properties in the Mountain View subdivision, I'm still extremely concerned about the impact that that's going to have. Also understanding what the detention pond is going to do, and again, how the runoff from homes that are going to be fertilizing and all of the other things are going to impact that. And again, I would really like to understand the study that's being done so that we can understand the full impact for the people that live in Mountain View, but also especially those that are going to be really affected in the lower areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, this will be fun. Shefty Heenan's 5494 Sharp Drive. I'm going to be opposing some of the people that spoke before me. So, big thanks to Amy and to Brian and to Kelly and Eric from the Planning Commission. Getting this project to this point was literally years in the making. Great work with Mike and the team to try to get to this. There was a lot of compromise to get to this. You're talking about, we said we wanted to preserve land. You got 58 acres of preserved land for 55 homes. You have the Eagle wetlands that has a fine of $37.5 a day. If you come close to those things, they're not going to come close to them. You have a preservation of conservation. You have doubled, for those 6 houses that are on Grand Circle, you also have double the landscaping requirements to help those folks out. You have the additional buffers and the detention pond as well. We have the sidewalk to nowhere that we are now going to connect to. And when you get to the end of that sidewalk, eventually, I hope it gets here, to a park. This is proposed site plan, not the site plan. It's going to change. Everything that they put forth in the PUD, they've come back and said, okay, I'll do it. I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. They're trying to be good neighbors. They removed the access to Grand Circle, which they could have done. Who would want that road cutting through in between your houses? Why I'm bringing this up? I'm sorry, 2 more points before I go back to why I'm bringing it up. I think the market will bear those 4 houses that are on the shared drive, which is really just a skinny road. Every time we talked in the Planning Commission, every time we talked in the special meetings here, we talked about, can you preserve the trees, protect the trees, what you can do for the trees. You have 58 acres of trees. I live on Sharp. I live across from North Shore. 25 years ago, North Shore was literally clear cut. Boom. I'm the end house of a cul-de-sac, and look at people's lights as they come down the road, shine right into the street of my house. They did that for about 7 years. I can barely see them now because all the trees have grown up and all the easements of the 30-foot easement between my house and Sharp Drive and the end of North Shore. It's there. What's supposed to be there is the emergency fire exit that had to be there while they were building. Well, once the roads were all done, their second means of egress went into North Shore, and that just closed up. It is overgrown with vegetation. People use it to cut from my road to North Shore, over to Clifford, to Russell, to walk. I get clear cut sounds bad, but one tree here and one tree there leaves no building envelope for them to build anything. So, as much as I don't want to see clear cut, I understand it. And if you can just envision what it might look like in a few years with the landscaping that takes place, the 58 acres that are preserved, this is a wonderful project. And when you say there's no benefit to you, I can tell you, I know it's a different time economically in real estate, but literally, in less than 2 years, property values for me doubled by North Shore just popping up across the street. It brought all sorts of greater possibilities for people to have houses in Genoa Township. So, kudos to the developer, kudos to the township staff for working through this for well over a year. So, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff. He did leave out a couple important things, like the water issue, people's wells. That is going to remain an issue for people with not just 55 wells, but with the extra use for landscaping. That's a lot bigger than 55 wells. But I want to first address what Ms. Deaton said about those 4 sticking out into the wetland. I agree that when you look at that picture, that would save more wetland and trees if those were not there. And I know they want to put as many houses as they can, but they're still going to get quite a few houses, and I think that would be a good thing to do, to get rid of that. So that was my first thing. That path, the path that they're going to build, from what I remember, that was in exchange for not doing something inside the subdivision. They were going to do some common thing. And Planning Commission thought that instead of doing that, let's do something different, and I think that's where that agreement came from. I don't know that I'd call it a free sidewalk, you know. Also, I take issue with the photos that you keep showing, and I don't know how much the board had been able to view everything, but I'd been at the Planning Commission meetings, and those pictures you showed do not represent that aerial view of the subject property today. It's solid green. Let's see, what else? There are a lot of ways to save trees. Arbor Day Foundation is just one place where you can go to and get the experts there if we do want to save trees inside this subdivision. It is a process, but it is doable. As for the oak cutting, that could be an issue. Let's see, what else? The landmark trees. The storm retention pond. You know, I understand it's a controlled rate and where the water leaves, but it still contains everything from that subdivision, and it still goes into the wetland unless there's some magic that happens in that retention pond to where it doesn't leave. The homes near the wetland edge and their septics, and I hadn't thought of this, I'm glad somebody brought it up, they're softeners, which will go out onto the ground and will make its way somewhere down towards the wetland. So that also is an issue. And while Jeff brought up some good points, he didn't address any of those things. And I think that's all I have on my list. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there Anybody else that would like to speak?
Good evening. Melanie Johnson, 3990 Chosen Road. Mr. Knoll, you've given some great presentations, and I appreciate the lengths that you've gone to make this comprehensive. I would just, you can still approve, I have no dog in this race, but the original plan for this site was actually into the wetlands to the west side. They had like 7 homes on that railway thing, and then they had reaching around. So like preserving the wetlands was never their idea. That was instituted by Genoa Township. They said, let's not do that because this is wetlands, and oh my goodness, it might be regulated by some greater force, but it was always to go into the wetlands. They pulled it back first time, second time, then they had 7 homes, now they only have 4. I just don't believe the story that they're there for the wetlands. That just happens to be factual that they had to preserve it. So you can approve or deny, no pony in this race, or dog, whatever. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak on this item? Okay, with that, then I will close the call to the public portion of this hearing as of 9:38. Barely see straight. And with that,
Just, I think clarification is needed here.
I would like you to have a chance to respond.
You never proposed to build in the wetlands. You were just showing what you could do
Right.
if you went with the
Right,
straight
the
zone.
parallel plan is what you can do
Right.
under straight zoning. We only showed it to get the count of what the units would be so that we could do the same or less under an alternate plan. We never proposed to go develop that side of the property.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify
Thank you,
that.
appreciate that.
Also, lots 13 through 16 are not in wetlands.
They're not, no.
There's one
Also
little
wanted
nick
to
as you
clarify
go
that.
through the road.
There's a 50-foot buffer from
Correct.
the edge of the wetlands in those lots.
You do have one little section of the road that
Yeah.
touches, but I would like to give you the opportunity, anything you've heard at the call to the public that you would like to respond to.
No, I appreciate our sole supporter, and you know, I think we're going around and around again on some of the same topics, and I would only try to make the point again more strongly is that this is a zoning hearing. This is not a site plan hearing. This is not final engineering hearing. So whether we do a dry well for the water softener discharge, or whether the road is 20 feet wide or 24 feet wide along the, those are site plan issues. A rezoning issue is, are you good with these 55 units in this general configuration with this portion of tree clearing and tree saving? Are you good with that? And I haven't heard anybody on this board or really in the public say no, that this is too many, okay? Now, there have been a lot of people that says, don't do anything on the property. Okay, but that doesn't respect the property rights. There's been people that have said no to the rezoning, but remember, we're rezoning it to comply with your master plan. This matches your master plan. That's what the whole parallel plan was all about. So the cluster is in your ordinance. The RPUD is in your ordinance to reduce to 3/4 acre lots. We didn't make it up. We're just following the rules, and we're asking you, do you really want this? Because that's what your rule book says, is 58 units, we're proposing 55. Preserve at least 50% open space, we're preserving 60% open space, or 70, or depends how you look at it, different things. So we've exceeded all the requirements in your ordinance, and our question is, are you willing to rezone it to what you have said you wanted? We can work out the details about whether we're using phosphorus fertilizer or not. It's not a rezoning issue. I think that would be my overriding speech to close before you vote on whatever you're going to vote on, is that let's bring it back to rezoning. Are you good with this? Because we can work out all the other details.
Well, I think the key point you just said there, I mean, I know so many people want us to just stop development. We don't want any more. We want it to stay country, rural. I agree, but we can't do that. We, unfortunately, are put up here to review plans as they come in front of us, and the only reason that we can base our denial or our approval on any project is based on reasons in our zoning ordinance. You know, we've had car washes galore come to us, and we can't say, nope, we don't want any more. If they meet the zoning, they meet the zoning. So.
Yep. I mean, and people do need to be aware, although the master plan is not the law, so to speak, it is a significant guideline, and if it's not actively followed and implemented, it could lead to problems for the community that may be worse than some of the problems that you are expressing that you're concerned about. Failure to follow this plan may discredit any attempt to use the plan as a defense for actions which may be challenged by property owners or developers in the future. So whether or not we're doing jumping jacks and backflips over the plan here, we do have to follow the law. So, and there has been a lot of work on the developer's part to try to meet our demands. There are a couple concerns here that we still have to work out. Joe, I guess my only question, and I know you said about the teeth level we wanted, but were this board to agree to the, our PUD, I'm sorry, getting a little late here. We are locking in the 55 houses, not necessarily, correct?
No,
Yeah,
you're just
so-
the request is just to rezone it to our PUD.
Or PUD, so.
And all that other, he's correct, that would come back to the planning commission for final site plan. This board does the final environmental assessment and the PUD agreement.
And the PUD site plan comes to the board for PUDs.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a little bit of concern with leaving an open end. You know, we think we're gonna get these hurdles crossed on the agreement, and I think we can. There's a couple kind of big ones, but I mean, I think we can. My concern is if we agree to change the zoning now, and then this falls apart, where are we?
Well, where you are is you're 2 steps short of having anybody be able to break ground, because we don't have final site plan, and we don't have construction documents, and we don't have any permits, and we don't have a PUD agreement, so we can't do anything with the zoning.
No, you can't, but, you know, the zoning is now permanently changed.
Well, then let's postpone it.
That was my motion.
I knew.
That he wanted to.
Well, we
needed to call the public.
So make your motion again.
Are you ready?
If you would like to make your motion, Rick, you can make your motion.
My motion is to postpone the rezoning ordinance of Z 2504, to the proposed amendment of zoning map and reclassification as to residential plan unit development, RPUD, and low-density residential, LDR, with the related development agreement, impact statement, and conceptual plans not being found in compliance with it at this point and needs further review.
Okay, I have a motion.
I'll second it.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, are we postponing to the next meeting? Should we designate that? Or just leave it open?
Depends how fast they get back to us.
Yeah, I feel like 2 weeks doesn't give us a lot of time to.
We've got a 5th Monday.
Yeah,
in
so there is
March,
actually
so
3
you get
weeks
3.
until the next meeting. It is
I hate to delay it anymore.
April
I mean,
7th.
it sounds like we're all moving in the same direction.
I do agree.
I'm okay, I mean, given that we have that extra week in here, I
Mhm.
think if we postpone it to the April 7th meeting, that way we don't have to do additional public notice because we're moving it directly here this evening.
Exactly.
To the next meeting. So if it's okay with the applicant, I think we can make that work.
Yes.
Rick, are you okay with that?
Yep.
Change to your motion? Okay, so I have a motion, I have a second. Further discussion?
And roll call, right?
Yep, I will need a roll call vote, please.
Right, before discussion, I want to make sure we are in, if he had asked for specifics, I want to make sure I understand why. What are we delaying it for? What's going to be done in the next 3 weeks to get it off of delay mode?
So I
What's
think it's
owed?
the items contained in the review letter, the staff's review, address those, all the comments in staff's review, and then the additional comments heard this evening related to wetland encroachment violations and the fines and penalties associated with that, fines and penalties for tree removal, water softener dry wells, construction traffic restrictions, oak wilt provisions.
So what does the developer have to come back to us with then?
So-
Because it sounds like we owe some stuff for Joe, right? What is the penalty?
So my
That's not
expectation
his.
would be for the developer to resubmit addressing all the information that they've heard this evening for us to review.
And you're okay with that, to have that back to us in 3 weeks?
I don't want to interrupt. Joe Squam with Pulte Homes, Michigan. And that's where I think the problem and the disconnect lies. So we're going to propose language relative to fertilizer or penalties or teeth, and then we're going to come back and then negotiate it in an open forum. It doesn't make any sense. Usually, what we do is we'll get a rezoning or a preliminary site plan approval subject to these sort of final site plan items worked out with staff or with legal counsel or with whomever, but to come back and negotiate the intricacies of a PUD agreement, very sort of fine type of language for very sort of unique items like fertilizer in an open forum. I'm struggling with the process. I'm not saying we wouldn't do it, I'm saying I just don't see it.
The point is
Yeah.
zoning to be or not to be.
Exactly.
The minutia, we get another crack at that.
Right, and we're okay with that.
You know, if it makes sense
Yeah.
in my mind to delay it for 3 months, or 3 weeks, sorry, three, okay, but I just can't reason. I think in 3 weeks, we may come back and start discussing minutia.
We're going to just do it all over again, and Mike kind of said it, it's just we're kind of going around in circles, and I fear that we're going to have the same circle 3 weeks from now or 6 weeks from now, because I've done this for 20 years, and I've been in the same situation, and I'm honestly not sure what I'm supposed to do at this point. And who am I supposed to talk to, right? Am I supposed to talk to planning, the attorney? Is my attorney supposed to talk to your attorney? Or are we coming back and negotiating these really, really fine points in an open forum again, and then if we don't have an agreement, are we going to come back again to the next meeting and talk about it? It's just, I'm struggling with the process.
I believe we would have a submittal with the items that Kelly has pointed out, addressed clearly to our satisfaction. And if you've addressed those, I don't think there's anything else to go around on that. It would have needed to be brought up
That's my
tonight.
question, though. If he addresses every single thing that we've asked for, the fertilizer type, the dry wells, I mean, everything, penalties, fees and
Right.
everything, how does that impact our decision whether or not to rezone?
I was going to say that Mike is right. We have to make a decision on whether or not we're going to rezone this or not. And that's what the motion should be, whether or not we are agreeing to change it to the 3-acre lots or 3/4 acre lots. So that should be the motion, and whether or not we want to move forward with this development or not.
No, there's already a motion on the table.
That's correct.
Right.
And it's been
There is a
seconded.
motion on the table, so you would have to, we
Could change the motion to deny, but I'm not
we
going to
need
do
to
that right
vote.
now, so.
Well,
We don't want that either.
Even if you were going to change it, we would need to vote on this
I
one
know.
and then make a new one. So this is the further discussion point of Rick's motion. If there is no further discussion, then I will ask for a roll call on Rick's motion
This motion is to postpone
Right.
until the next meeting,
till the next meeting.
under the conditions that Kelly has spelled out, the conditions of what we need answered. There are no new gotchas, nothing else to come up. Those are the issues, and a couple of them are kind of large.
No, that's clear. I think we completely understand what the issues are. I guess my confusion is how we get to a resolution on those issues at the next meeting. We could submit and say, the penalty is, for chopping a tree down is $2,000. And then we could come back and say, you're going to say, no, it's not enough. And then we'll just continue to do this sort of
I think that back and forth will go on before we get to this meeting.
Well, and that's kind of what I was saying. I wasn't sure who I was doing the back and forth
No,
with.
absolutely. I think
That's fine.
I think
Again,
Joe and Kelly need to handle.
That's fine, and that's kind of, what we typically do is we'll talk with staff or legal counsel and negotiate those items. I just didn't, I guess I wasn't clear on
I think we
that.
provided some guidance on
Yeah.
that, so they know what we're looking, Joe?
Yeah, I think he's got a great point. Everything, I think, can be worked out, but the penalty part of chopping down tree or encroaching
Encroachment.
on the wetland buffer, I think that really should come from this board, and, if there's an agreement as to that, you can postpone or you can approve, and all those other items really are something that are handled at, site plan and the final determinations.
Okay, so we would want that final fine level to, I still think we can discuss it.
Right, yeah.
With these gentlemen before the next meeting, but not pawn it off on staff.
And that would be in the PUD agreement, not the rezone.
The fine level would be a board decision.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so there should be some guidance on that.
Okay.
So to that end, is there a comfort level with a caliper to caliper replacement if there's a tree that is removed from the property that was required to be saved and it's removed? The applicant made a comment earlier that it should be replaced at a caliper to caliper. If it was a 36-inch tree, you need to plant 36 inches worth of caliper trees. I know that you can't plant that big of a tree, but you could make them plant, 6-inch caliper trees to replace that one 36-inch tree that was removed or something. Is the board comfortable with that type of a requirement or doubling it? I guess that's where my head was going, is that we would do a caliper to caliper replacement. Maybe we could put a multiplier on it. Are there thoughts on that?
Input from the board.
Okay, caliper to caliper.
Yeah.
Rick, are you
Okay.
comfortable with that? Yeah,
And then the other
obviously.
issue was wetland violation. So if there's an encroachment into the natural feature setback or into the wetland, the toss-up was $25,000 worth of penalty. That seems high, but
Seems very excessive to me.
is
I
$5,000?
get you trying to make
I
a
get the,
point.
yeah, I get the ask.
Plow our
Um,
sidewalk.
I just think that it does need to be enough that, it's not, get a lawyer and sue me.
Association agreement and pay themselves.
So I think a $5,000 with a remediation plan or something that requires that they remediate whatever the impacts were associated with it to be approved by staff. And we could maybe do it like 5,000 first offense that doubles with each additional, right? So 5,000 the first time, then it's 10, then it's 15,
I like
then it's
that.
20.
That sounds more reasonable,
That's-
but still has a bite.
Is the rest of the board comfortable with that number?
I'm looking at trustee Susie because I really want his,
Want to make it higher?
I already had it high.
How about start at 10?
No, whatever the board, whatever everyone agrees to, is fine with me.
Start at 10, double every time.
10?
10, that's fine.
I do like the multiplier feature. Okay, and Bill, you've suggested 10?
Yeah, yes. I just did that to keep the discussion moving. Yep.
So just so it's for clarification, so if somebody mistakenly mows into a wetland buffer, the fine is $10,000?
No, I don't think that was meant to be against the homeowner, right?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're worried about once they're
Yeah,
gone.
'cause that's what I heard you say,
The
Mr. Chair, yeah.
homeowner's gonna go out there with his
Yeah.
chainsaw and say, if I cut these down, there's nothing they can do to make me
It'll
replace
be
them.
in their homeowner's agreement, whatever we decide.
it needs to be in the homeowner's
Look at
agreement.
bylaws, is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah.
Yeah, it needs to be in the bylaws that, you know,
Well, that's
yeah,
gonna
not that I
be
think that you
the
gentlemen, I mean,
PUD
you
agreement.
gentlemen would be subject to it as well, but once you're gone
Yeah,
and
well-
the thing is fully developed, we've had instances where homeowners come through and, you know, do some things and, you know, well, what you gonna do? Sue me. And,
I believe this is something that needs addressed in the homeowners association, and we're starting to nitpick here.
Right.
This is,
Well, the master deed could be written to have language in it that it says that it will adhere to the PUD.
So my preference would be for us to do, the master deed is part of our final site plan review. That is really how the homeowners association is going to deal with these issues. I think the bigger concern here, at least that I heard, was that there's some concern with the developer going in, right, and clear cutting the trees to make it easier for them, or, you know, going into a wetland to make it easier for them. My sense was the concern is really that the developer could act unscrupulously, sorry, I don't even know if that's a word.
And I'll tell you, I'm fine with the higher fees, because I know what we do and what we don't do and the controls that we have. But to fine a homeowner $5,000 or $10,000 for potentially unintentionally doing something in a wetland buffer, I feel like it's a little egregious, it's a little bit excessive. But if you want to hold me to some high standard, I'm okay with it, because I'm confident in
I
our.
may or may not trust you more than a homeowner.
I'm sorry?
I may or may not trust you more than a homeowner.
That's fair. Exactly.
Yeah, oh, no, absolutely,
Yeah.
but
So
I'd like the
he's willing
homeowners to at least
accept a high
do
fine.
similar.
I'm sorry?
You're willing to accept some type of high fee because it's not gonna happen.
It's
right?
not.
Okay.
It's not going to happen.
But a homeowner, yeah, $5,000 because I mow 6 inches too far into that, that's way too much. Leave that to the homeowners association.
Yeah, I don't think we're talking about a little extra mowing, we're talking about coming in and
Yeah,
taking down.
and
a tree.
and we can negotiate the master deed bylaws with staff and/or your legal counsel, and so I think that can be worked out, and we're happy to do that. I'm just trying to be, you know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
reasonable here.
Our legal counsel has asked that we at least give a
And I
guideline
understand
on
that.
the amount.
And again, if it's relative to our actions or inaction, I'm okay with that, because I know how we develop it, I know how we execute, and I know the things that we do, and so I'm okay with maybe a higher threshold or higher standard for the developer.
Okay.
We've had enough discussion, I think, with all those things, that we have some clear direction for that. We still need to vote on the motion, and then to postpone to the next meeting.
That is the
Roll call.
motion before us.
That's roll call.
We have been continuing with discussion. If there is no further discussion, then Clerk Deaton is going to do a roll call vote for us.
Okay, Walker,
I vote to postpone to the next meeting.
Havarder,
No, I think we should vote today.
Susie,
Postpone.
Deaton, no, Spiker,
Postpone.
Robin, Hunt,
yes, postpone.
Reimer.
No.
4-3.
Okay. So with that, we have postponed the disposition of the rezoning ordinance to the April 7th meeting, with the idea that we will come back with the guidelines that we have laid out.
Okay. All right.
And make sure we get those squared away.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We're not
Thank you.
down. These are all these others.
I
Okay, with,
understand.
I'm talking.
with that, we do need to cover the environmental impact assessment.
The PUD agreement first.
So we would need some motions on those, which will likely be to postpone as well, but, yeah. We gotta kind of follow the order here.
I mean, at this point, would it make sense to just postpone the remaining items, C, D, and E?
Yes.
To
Yes.
April 17th, that's my motion.
Yes.
I second.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same?
Now
Motion
I'm done.
carried. Okay.
Do we have two more to vote? or-
Yeah, we went ahead and called it all in one.
Oh, all in one, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your
Have a
time.
good night.
Thank you.
So with that, we are going to move to action item number 4, which is a request for the approval of year-end budget amendments for fiscal year 2024-2025 involving budget fund numbers 101, 202, 208, 212, 249, 401, 402, 464, and 532.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So before you this evening are the amendments to this current fiscal year budget. This budget year ends at the end of this month, and the new budget year that we just approved at our last meeting takes over April 1st. So as is customary at the end of the year, there are often some budget line items that came in over or that are lower. So we have prepared the amendments to the budget. The green line items are line items that are being increased, and the yellow are items that are being decreased. I did include in the Mortensen column notes a summary of the major changes, just so that you would know exactly why the items were being proposed to go up or down. And I know it's late, so I don't intend to go line item by line item, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And we're looking for a motion to amend this that needs to happen before the end of the fiscal year.
I'll make a motion to approve the year-end budget amendments for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. Do you want me to read the whole budget numbers?
No, it's not necessary.
Support.
Okay, I have a motion, I have support. Any further discussion?
Just one question, and then if you don't mind. These budgets, although they're approved, this is a line in the sand. 6 months from now, we can go and tweak these budget line items.
No, this is last year's
budget.
This is last year's. Yep, this
Oh,
is,
it does
It ends
say-
April
these are
1st.
budget amendments for
All right.
last year.
Sorry,
Yep.
sorry.
Just to kind of correct them in
Sorry,
alignment.
sorry.
The Mortensen column.
This is a
It
final-
says right there, I got it.
Where the variances come from.
Final
So-
wrap-up.
The other budget that we approved at the last meeting, which takes effect starting April 1st, that one can be amended at any time.
Got it.
Yep.
Sorry, proceed.
It's a good question.
Not a problem. That's why we have discussion. Any further discussion? Okay, in that case, I will ask Clerk Deaton for a roll call, please.
Varder.
Yes.
Susie.
Yes.
Deaton, yes. Hunt.
Yes.
Reiber.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Spiher.
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Moving on, action item number 5 is the consideration of a request to add an additional full-time employee for a clerk's assistant position within the clerk's department.
Yes, I would like to hire a full-time employee to work as the clerk's assistant. I have a deputy clerk who is a part-time worker, and I need somebody that is going to be a full-time worker. We need to get somebody that is going to be trained to do elections instead of hiring all temporary workers. We need to have somebody that's going to know our complete voting process and get them trained on the electronic voting software or the qualified voter file, and have them be able to work the counter during the elections, and have the temporary workers pretty much work the elections itself. But in the clerk's department, we need somebody that's going to be there full-time in that department, helping people register to vote and cleaning up the voter rolls and stuff in the process. We also have one of the second largest precincts in the county. We have actually over 18,000 voters and 9 precincts. So we are growing, and many developments are coming into the area, and we just have that many more voters coming into the area. So we need somebody that's going to support us.
We also have a lower number of staff under the clerk to service that number of registered voters.
Yep.
And doing a comparison among other similarly sized townships, so.
I'm sure there's a need.
And with that, I will entertain a motion on action item number 5.
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion? With that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. The clerk gets a new full-time staffer.
Thank you, guys.
Good luck.
Yes, we have to post it, and so people can make application
Yeah. When you're looking to fill that position.
as soon as possible, so we can get them trained.
Very good.
With that, we will move on to action item number 6, which is a request to approve a project agreement with the Livingston County Road Commission to reconstruct approximately .43 miles of Euler Road from Grand River Avenue to the end of pavement, and this will be through the Pavement Preservation Program, the PPP as the Road Commission calls it, with the township's cost up to 50% of the total project cost. And that is based on engineer estimates not to exceed $125,000. And this payment will be made from the Road Improvement Fund number 401-446-812-008. Anyone wish to have a discussion, or would we like?
Discussion.
I will entertain a motion. What's that?
I've got discussion.
Okay.
This, I went out and drove this Sunday.
Okay.
After it had been raining for 2 days. I don't see with my civilian eyes the need to do anything to this section of road. It's paved, it's got sewage drainage on the side, the pavement is better off than the street in front of my house. I don't understand the need to do anything here than maybe clear some large trees over portions of the road. I'm okay with putting money in the piggy bank, but I think for this one and the one on Beck Road, I think that the scope of work needs to be requoted. I just personally, I need somebody to explain to me why it needs such a facelift, because it looks perfectly fine to me.
That doesn't really look perfectly fine, though.
Okay.
I guess I struggle because this is not my forte.
Expertise.
I don't know what roads need done, so I'm gonna go with the recommendation from the road commission because they know what they're doing.
The engineers are very qualified.
From the road commission, if we could ask, does he know about this program?
So,
Probably.
these projects are actually recommended to us by the Livingston County Road Commission. We work directly with them on the Pavement Preservation Program road projects. They typically rate roads using something called a PASER rating, which is a pavement assessment. And they look at roads for structural loss of integrity, alligator cracking are some of the things that they look for. And they rate all the roads in the county. They produce a map that shows the roads in Genoa Township, for example, that have a low PASER rating. And we sort of partner with them on these projects. So they're not projects that we necessarily go to them and say, we want to repave this road. We kind of allow them to dictate the roads in our community that they feel like are good eligible projects for it.
Well, and I'd like to think since
When
they're
was the last
willing to
time it
pay
was
half
redone?
the
'Cause
cost.
that's August of 2019.
Yeah, I do not know.
The other thing is, the one slight difference is, the peak is 470 cars a day down Euler Road, so it does see significantly more traffic, than a subdivision road. Like Robin said, the road commission has an excellent staff that we pay to make judgment on the roads, and they pass the information along to us. I've seen them in action, being a former road commissioner. The staff is great.
We just paved a big portion of our subdivision, and our roads were looking better than this when we paved them, before we paved them. So this is not unusual.
This is from 2019, those pictures. So did it look like that when you saw it?
I didn't take pictures in the daytime when it was all nice and dry like that. I took pictures in the evening when it was raining. And I not only took one, because I had to lean out the window and drive while I was at it, because there was someone coming up from behind me. I just think, if you want to go ahead and approve the money and put it in the biggie bank, but before that gets kicked off, I think that somebody needs to go back out there and take a look at it and reassess the scope of work.
They've already done that, that's why it's brought to us.
Okay. I know how I'm voting.
Okay.
Nope, that's fine. Absolutely.
You ready for a motion?
I was going to say, with that, I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the $125,000 project agreement with Livingston County Road Commission to reconstruct approximately .43 miles of Euclid Road from Grand River Avenue to the end of the pavement through the Pavement Preservation Program, PPP, with the township cost being up to 50% of the project, not to exceed $125,000 from the Road Improvement Fund, 401-446-812-008.
Okay, I have a motion. I have support. Any further discussion? Given the discussion, I would ask the clerk for a roll call vote, please.
Okey dokey. Let's start with Hunt.
Yes.
Spider.
Yes.
Deaton, yes. Susie?
Yes.
Varder.
Trust in Bill's judgment. No.
Both way good.
Well, you went there.
Walker?
Yes.
Ryber?
No.
Okay, so that's a 5-2 vote, motion carried. Action item number 7 is a request to approve a project agreement with the Livingston County Road Commission to reconstruct approximately .63 miles of Herbst Road from Door Road to the end of pavement through the Pavement Preservation Program, with the township's cost up to 50% of the project cost, not to exceed $147,500 from Road Improvement Fund 401-446-812-013.
Motion to approve the project.
Okay.
There's some discussion.
I was going to say, would we like to have a brief discussion? Or Kelly, if you'd like to fill us in with just a little bit of information on this one.
Yeah, I mean, so this is the same thing. This is Herbst Road, east of Door. This is another project that the Livingston County Road Commission identified as a roadway that had a low Pacer rating. And so we did include all of these projects, by the way, in the budget. So the budget that we approved at the last meeting did include all of these projects as road improvement projects. And this is just finalizing that project agreement so that they can do the work if the board wishes to continue that partnership with the road commission.
Okay, thank you. Anyone have any questions or discussion on this project here?
This one's a wreck.
Okay.
So is that a motion?
With that, I will entertain a motion.
Janine already made the motion.
I made a motion to approve the project on Herbst Road.
Fine.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion carried. Action item number 8 is a request to approve a project agreement with the Livingston County Road Commission for limestone resurfacing, tree work, limited drainage, and other necessary related work for approximately 5,165 feet of Beck Road from Chilson Road to Fisk Road, with the township's cost not to exceed $147,000 from Road Improvement Fund 401-446-812-010. And just to clarify, on the gravel road projects, the township does cover 100% of the cost of these projects.
This project was also included in the budget. And again, we rely on our partnership with Livingston County Road Commission. Trevor Bennett is the director of maintenance. Him and I discuss every year potential gravel road projects. He lets me know the roads that he believes are in need of some additional limestone. He identified both Beck Road and Crooked Lake Road as being good projects for this year's gravel road project. And so that's why the project agreements are before you this evening.
Does it get done before the bridge or after the bridge is done?
I don't know what the construction schedule will be.
I hope it's after.
Well, the bridge is, what, another month, so probably
There's a lot of
after.
people that bypass it.
Right. I'd move approval of the Beck Road limestone project from Chilson to Fisk.
Support.
I have a motion, I have support. Any further discussion?
How much it says, I'm just curious, it says 5165 feet, so what's that miles wise? Because
So 1320 is a quarter mile, so.
52,000 is a mile. 5,200.
Yeah.
So just under a
Think of
mile.
Just under a mile.
For discussion, I don't think this one's bad enough that it needs it to be done. Just my opinion.
Okay.
Drove it, been there, done that.
it looks pretty smooth to me for a dirt road. There's not major potholes.
It gets worse closer to Fisk, for sure. And it
You can
holds
see
it.
where they've been adding some material.
Looks like there's some drainage issues near the driveway there. I would not profess, I'm a financial road guy, I would not profess to be a construction road guy expert, so I do trust the staff at the Livingston County Road Commission. They are excellent.
Well, and they try to spread out that limestone on the dirt roads throughout the township and just pick as we go. And this is a pretty big cut through.
Would you rather see it paved, Bill?
Spend
would
the
cost
money
a lot
next year
more.
or spend the money when I think it needs it, unless somebody can educate me. I'm not an LCR, I'm not the road commission guy, so I just drive down and say, dude, I could do 70 miles an hour and never leave the road.
But you would only do 55.
I know. I'm just saying, there's no potholes, it's got culverts on the side. Yes, the trees, you gotta watch out for those, but
You're not taking pictures at 70, are you?
no, I took pictures standing still.
Okay.
So it would be Trevor Bennett that would be able to answer your questions about why he selected this road. And I'm certainly happy to invite him to future meetings when we do these so that he can provide the board a breakdown. Ideally, it would be when we're doing the budget, we would get some information before we put it in the budget about the need.
Okay. So with that, I will entertain a motion.
I did a motion.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm zoning out. I'm not trying.
I don't know if I have.
Did I get a
support.
second?
You did, and I supported it.
Okay.
That was my further discussion, I'm sorry. So, with that, Clerk Deaton, I would ask for a roll call vote, given what we've been told.
Okay. Hovarder.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Susie?
Yes.
Deaton, no. Spire?
Yes.
Hunt?
Yes.
Reiber?
No.
Walker?
Yes.
Okay, by a 5-2 vote, action item number 8 has passed. On to action item number 9, which is a request to approve a project agreement with the Livingston County Road Commission for limestone resurfacing, tree work, limited drainage, and other necessary related work for approximately 7,440 feet of Crooked Lake Road from Chilson Road to Fisk Road, with the township's cost not to exceed $181,000 from Road Improvement Fund 401-446-812-011.
Now, Kelly already explained this one when she did Beck, so.
She did.
What'd you think of this one?
This one is pretty bad. This
Okay.
this one, I think, could use a little TLC.
Okay, I'll move approval of Crooked Lake Road from Chilson to Fisk per the road commission's quote.
I'll support that.
Okay, I have a motion, I have support. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I would ask all those in favor to signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion carried. On to our final item, which is items for discussion. And number 10 is the discussion of a document shredding event as submitted by trustee Hovarder.
Not really in the mood anymore. We've been here all night. I just thought we could have document shredding day, and I wanted it to be recycling. I thought it could be here. It could be like PR, get to know thing. Whoever takes our recycling, or our shredding, do they recycle it?
We have a bin in the basement,
Right.
and I call them for collection, and they shred it at their facility.
Right, but
But-
do they recycle it?
I don't know if
We will
they-
have to ask.
I don't know if they recycle it. I know that they shred it.
Yeah, because if they're not gonna do that,
Yeah.
like to me, I want to
But
recycle it.
I'm throwing in ballots and, stuff that, from previous, I guess, elections that are allowed to be released and shredded.
Mhm.
So, but they are under lock and key and secure, and they take them and then they shred them in their facilities. So I don't think that they would recycle them. I think that they shred them and dispose of them.
Well, like Recycle Livingston does the same thing. They take it and they're locked up,
Mhm.
but they take them and they shred them and recycle them. That was
Oh,
kind of
okay.
what I wanted, was to have them be recycled.
That I would have to find out, but I know that there's a big cost associated with do you know how much we pay for the recycling bins?
I don't.
Yeah, I don't.
That's something I'd have to get
Yeah,
back
I mean,
with
it's
you
just
on.
something we'd have to explore. I don't know what the cost is. I've been to those before though, and people seem to come. There's always like a huge line.
Wow.
So,
After tax time, huh?
Different tax day, yeah?
Before tax time.
No, after. When you get rid of the 10-year stuff.
You know, Tuesday or Thursday, you could invite the big red barrel, you know, outside, you know, just like, you know, hey, we're off.
I guess we'd have to.
Absolutely.
Someone would have
Come
to
here.
do some research and see how much it costs.
Yeah, we'll have to look in, we'll
Yes,
contact
and I,
someone's not-
yeah, that's all.
Spoke up, I
I
thought.
just kinda wanted to gauge interest is all. Some people think it's a good idea, some people
Okay.
said they wouldn't attend, whatever. It's okay,
I like recycling.
I know, I'm a
Yeah,
recycler,
no,
I would do
I
it.
think it's a good idea. I think any service we can provide to our residents at a cost benefit
Mm-hmm.
is good.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just have to delve into it further, that's all that's all I know.
Do a little bit of investigation.
Yes.
So with that, I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion
Unless
to
anyone else
adjourn.
has any further
Second.
comments.
No more.
All right. Have a motion, have a
Walker made a motion to adjourn.
Driver seconded.
Driver second.
Okay.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. You don't want to keep going?
I might not come in.
It's
almost tomorrow. No, I might not come in.